Hello everyone. I know many of you are watching this video to fall asleep. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments what time you're watching and where you're from. Now, let's begin and relax together. NPC behavior in real life. People acting robotic or scripted. There are moments in life when the world around you feels strangely artificial, when the flow of human activity begins to resemble something less like living presence and more like pre-programmed choreography. As if the people you pass on a crowded street or stand beside in a supermarket aisle are not quite fully there, not quite awake, not fully engaged with the wonder or unpredictability of existence. They move in cycles, repeating phrases, gestures, and behaviors with the same mechanical predictability you might expect in a video game, where the shopkeeper or the passerby greets you with the same words every time you approach, never deviating, never surprising, never revealing something deeper than the surface. In games, we call them NPCs, non-player characters, designed to create the illusion of a living world but existing only within narrow loops. And when you notice this same quality in real life, when you see people speaking without listening, moving without awareness, or repeating cultural scripts without thought, it can feel unsettling, even eerie, as though you are surrounded not by individuals with inner universes but by actors trapped in a performance they do not know they are giving. Tonight, I invite you to walk with me through this feeling, to sit with the discomfort and the fascination it stirs, and I ask you to stay until the end, for hidden within the concept of NPC behavior is not just a critique of others, but a profound mirror of our own humanity, a mirror that can teach us what it truly means to be awake, alive, and present in a world that often drifts into autopilot. The term NPC may be modern, born from gaming culture, but the idea it touches is ancient. Philosophers have long observed that much of human life is lived unconsciously, governed by habit, imitation, and conformity. Soren Kierkegaard warned of the crowd that dissolves individuality, reducing people to echoes of one another. Nietzsche described the herd, a state of existence in which people follow collective scripts rather than daring to live authentically. Even in the Eastern traditions, we find echoes of this concern. Buddhism speaks of living in ignorance or sleep, mistaking illusions for reality, until mindfulness awakens us. In our own daily lives, we see this not as lofty philosophy, but as the simple fact that so many actions, words, and decisions seem to arise not from genuine presence, but from routine. Consider how often you greet someone with "How are you?" without listening for an answer, or how often you reach for your phone not because you need to, but because you are caught in a loop, or how often you nod in conversation while your mind drifts elsewhere. These are small examples, but together they point towards something larger. The realization that we often live as though scripted, repeating patterns not chosen but inherited from culture, family, or habit. Psychology supports this observation. Studies suggest that nearly half of our daily behavior is habitual, performed without conscious awareness. Habits conserve energy, sparing our brains from constant decision-making. They are efficient, even necessary, but efficiency can easily turn into inertia. The problem is not that habits exist, but that we mistake them for life itself, slipping into autopilot until whole weeks, months, or even years pass with little awareness. Think of the way you might drive a familiar route and arrive without recalling the turns, or the way you scroll through endless feeds of information without remembering a single thing you've seen. In these moments, you are not absent in body, but absent in awareness, moving through the world like a programmed character. And here is the uncomfortable truth. When we call others NPCs, when we observe robotic or scripted behavior, what we are truly noticing is the shadow of this same tendency within ourselves. We are unsettled not only by their lack of presence, but by the reminder of our own sleepwalking. To recognize this is not to fall into despair, but to approach life with humility. If so much of our existence drifts toward automatic scripts, then the question becomes, how do we break free? But before we move there, let us linger in the observation, for it holds lessons of its own. In the supermarket, the cashier repeats the same phrases with hundreds of customers. In the workplace, colleagues ask the same questions every Monday about the weekend. In daily small talk, acquaintances cycle through predictable topics: weather, news headlines, polite laughter, like characters programmed with limited dialogue. At times, this can feel oppressive, as though individuality has been swallowed. But notice also the reasons why. Scripts offer safety. Repetition eases social tension. Predictability smooths the friction of countless small interactions in a busy world. In this way, NPC behavior is not proof that people lack depth, but evidence of the strategies humans use to navigate overwhelming complexity. And yet, while these patterns serve a purpose, they also risk burying the spark of authenticity beneath layers of repetition. Culturally, we see this tendency magnified. Media often feeds us the same narratives, phrases, and reactions, echoed across conversations like rehearsed lines. Social norms encourage conformity, teaching us what to say and when to say it, rewarding predictability and discouraging deviation. In history, entire societies have fallen into mechanical obedience, where individuals surrendered their voices to collective scripts, bureaucratic systems, propaganda, or tradition. Hannah Arendt famously wrote of the banality of evil, describing how ordinary people participated in atrocities not out of malice, but out of unthinking adherence to roles and routines, acting like characters following instructions rather than questioning the morality of their actions. This is perhaps the darkest version of NPC behavior, when the failure to awaken from the script results not just in dullness, but in harm. And yet, on a more personal level, we see the same dynamic in quieter ways. In relationships, partners can fall into automatic exchanges. How was your day? Fine, without truly listening, reducing intimacy to ritual. Families can gather around the same table but repeat the same arguments, the same stories, without growth. Friendships can become echoes of past dynamics, comfortable but stagnant. Even love itself can be dulled when words of affection are repeated without presence. "When I love you" becomes a line in the script rather than a genuine expression felt anew each time. When we look closely, we realize that the danger of NPC-like living is not only in others, but in ourselves, in the erosion of depth, in the loss of the improvisational spark that makes life vibrant. And so we come to the central insight. NPC behavior is not about dehumanizing others, but about awakening ourselves. The concept becomes powerful when turned inward, when used as a mirror. Where in your own life are you repeating lines without meaning them? Where are you following routines without questioning them? Where are you present only in body but absent in soul? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. For the antidote to NPC living is awareness, what mindfulness traditions call waking up. When you pause to notice your breath, when you listen fully to another person, when you act with intention rather than reflex, you step out of the script. You become, in a sense, a player again in the game of life, not just a character moved by unseen code. Examples of this awakening abound in history and culture. Socrates disrupted the scripts of Athenian society by asking uncomfortable questions, refusing to let people remain unexamined. Artists like Van Gogh painted not what they were told, but what they felt, breaking away from conventions. Activists and reformers, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Rosa Parks, refused to follow the scripts imposed on them by oppressive systems, and in doing so, rewrote what was possible. Each of these figures shows us what it means to resist the automatic, to live as an improviser rather than as an NPC. But awakening need not be dramatic or world-changing. It can be as simple as noticing the beauty of light falling on your desk, as small as choosing to look a stranger in the eyes and truly smile, as quiet as putting away your phone and listening with your whole being to someone who needs to be heard. Let us also not forget that presence is contagious. When you step out of the script, you invite others to do the same. When you respond to "How are you?" with honesty rather than reflex, you create space for depth. When you break from small talk to share something genuine, you remind others that they too can step outside their loops. This ripple effect is profound. What begins as one person awakening can slowly awaken entire communities, just as one improvisation in a scripted scene can transform the energy of the play. And so we return to where we began, to the unsettling moments when life feels filled with NPCs. Rather than mocking or despairing, we can treat these moments as gentle reminders that the ease of autopilot is always waiting to claim us. But so too is the possibility of presence. The choice, again and again, is whether we drift into the script or awaken to the improvisation. Perhaps the truest question is not, are others NPCs? But am I awake? That question, asked sincerely, can transform how we live. As we draw to a close, let me leave you with this reflection. Life is brief, and it is precious, and though routines and habits carry us along, it is within our power to awaken. The next time you notice yourself repeating a phrase without thought, or moving through a day without awareness, pause. Breathe. Look around. Break the loop, even in the smallest of ways. For life is not a script, but a stage waiting for improvisation, and you are not a background character, but the living, breathing author of your own presence. And as you drift into your own reflections tonight, may you carry this truth, that behind every script there is a human heart, and behind every loop there is the chance to awaken, to be more than an NPC, to live fully, vividly, and awake in the mystery of existence. Repeating patterns in daily life, odd cycles that feel like programming errors. There are times when life feels like it is repeating itself in quiet, almost secret ways, as though the world has become caught in its own echo, whispering the same tune over and over, daring you to notice, daring you to ask why. You step into a shop you rarely visit and hear a song playing that you had been humming just hours before, and the next day the same song greets you in yet another place, as if woven into the background of your week. You run into the same stranger twice in different parts of the city, their presence startling you into awareness of how improbable such recurrence should be. Or you check the clock and find the same numbers staring back at you, 11:11, 2:22, 4:44. At first you shrug, but then it happens again and again until the pattern feels undeniable. Sometimes the repetition is subtler, braided into the fabric of your relationships. The same arguments surfacing again and again in different words, the same lessons returning in new forms, the same cycles of hope and disappointment winding their way back through the corridors of your life. In those moments, reality feels less like a stream flowing freely forward and more like a record skipping on the same groove, or a film reel caught in an endless loop, replaying a scene until the viewer, or perhaps the actor, notices. And when you notice, when you feel the weight of repetition, you cannot help but ask, is this simply coincidence, or is life itself trying to show me something? Stay with me until the end, because in this reflection lies not only an exploration of strange patterns, but also an invitation to see your life with new eyes. Repetition has always haunted and guided human imagination. From the earliest myths, people sensed that life was not a straight line but a wheel, a turning circle that brought back the same themes under new disguises. In ancient India, the doctrine of samsara described existence as an endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, repeating until enlightenment breaks the wheel. In Greece, the philosopher Heraclitus spoke of the eternal rhythms of fire, change, and recurrence, while the Stoics later entertained the idea of eternal return, in which the cosmos plays out the same drama over and over through infinite ages. Among the Mayans, time itself was sacred repetition, their calendar built not as a straight line, but as interlocking circles of days, months, and eras. Even in modern times, Nietzsche's thought experiment of eternal recurrence asks us to imagine living our lives again and again, every detail repeating endlessly, an idea that either terrifies or liberates, depending on how you see the worth of your days. These visions, across cultures, all point to one truth. Repetition is not an accident, but a fundamental rhythm of existence, something too deeply ingrained in life to ignore. And yet, beyond cosmic philosophy, repetition reveals itself in the intimate details of daily life. You may notice that the same type of person appears in your story again and again, different faces, same dynamics. Or that you continually find yourself in situations where the same decision lies before you, as if life is offering a second, third, fourth chance to respond differently. This is not mere coincidence. Psychologists like Freud recognized that human beings are prone to what he called repetition compulsion, the tendency to reenact unresolved conflicts, to unconsciously recreate the conditions of past wounds in an attempt, however misguided, to master them. A person neglected in childhood may repeat neglect in adulthood, drawn to partners who withhold affection. Someone humiliated in youth may replay situations where power dynamics repeat, testing whether they will stand up this time. Life, in this sense, is a rehearsal room where the same script is played until we learn to change the lines. And when we become aware of these patterns, we suddenly find ourselves holding the key to our own freedom. But repetition is not only personal, it is collective, too. History repeats itself with uncanny fidelity. Empires rise and fall on similar arcs. Wars erupt for familiar reasons. Ideologies collapse under the weight of their own excesses. Mark Twain famously remarked that history does not repeat, but it rhymes. And in that rhyme lies a haunting recognition. Humanity struggles with the same lessons again and again. The Roman Empire overextends, and centuries later other powers follow the same trajectory. Economic booms and busts return with different names but identical rhythms. Movements for justice surge, recede, and surge again, reminding us that the same moral patterns demand attention across generations. We call these cycles progress and decline, but beneath the labels they are echoes, reverberations of deeper structures within human behavior. And then there are the repetitions that feel less like psychology or history and more like cosmic whispers. Coincidences so precise that they tug at the edges of logic. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by chance alone. A woman dreams of a scarab beetle, and the next day, in the middle of Jung's office, an actual beetle flies to the window, a species rare in that region, appearing at the exact moment the dream is discussed. A man thinks of an old friend, absent for years, and receives a letter from him that very afternoon. A child draws a picture of a place she has never seen, and months later her family moves to a house that matches it almost exactly. Science may tell us that probability can account for these, that with billions of lives and infinite events, some will inevitably align. But the heart resists this dismissal, because when these repetitions happen to us, they feel charged with meaning, like reality itself has leaned in to wink at us. And here, at the center of our reflection, lies the most important insight. Repeating patterns, whether personal, cultural, or cosmic, are not random errors in life's programming. They are signals, messages, lessons waiting to be learned. They may be the unconscious mind speaking to itself, rehearsing until healing comes. They may be culture replaying its mistakes until wisdom takes root. They may be the universe itself showing its structure, rhythm woven into every corner of existence. To treat them as meaningless is to miss their invitation. To notice them is to begin to wake up. Science, too, recognizes the ubiquity of cycles. Nature itself is repetition. The sun rises and sets, the moon waxes and wanes, the tides return, the seasons turn, cells divide, the heart beats. Even at the quantum level, particles vibrate in repeating patterns, energy oscillates, waves rise and fall. The universe is not a straight line, it is a symphony of loops. And in our bodies, repetition is both survival and identity. The steady rhythm of breath, the predictable firing of neurons, the cycles of sleep, hunger, hormones, and growth. To be alive is to repeat. Without repetition, we would dissolve into chaos. And yet, when repetition shows up in daily life as odd cycles, uncanny coincidences, or repeating numbers, we treat it as anomaly rather than essence. Perhaps what unsettles us is not the repetition itself, but the sudden awareness of it. We expect novelty, and when reality reveals its loops, we glimpse the coded structure beneath. It feels like a glitch, but it is the design. Still, repetition is not only rhythm, it is also meaning. In art, repetition is how beauty emerges. A chorus repeats in a song to root itself in memory. A painter echoes shapes and colors to create harmony. A poet returns to the same line to drive it deeper into the soul. In ritual, repetition becomes sacred. The prayer said each morning, the candle lit each evening, the mantra whispered again and again until it shapes the heart. Repetition is not error here, it is emphasis. Life, too, may use repetition in the same way. Repeating lessons not to trap us, but to engrave them into our awareness. Repeating joys not to bore us, but to let gratitude take root. Repeating patterns not as mistakes, but as mirrors. And so, When you encounter repetition in your life, you have a choice. You can see it as meaningless coincidence, a glitch in the code, and move on. Or you can treat it as an invitation to notice, to ask what lesson is being whispered. The same conflict arises again. What response is life asking of you this time? The same opportunity presents itself. Are you ready to choose differently? The same numbers appear. What rhythm are you being asked to honor? To pay attention is to awaken. To awaken is to shift from passive passenger to conscious participant. The loops may continue, but your relationship to them changes, and that alone is enough to transform their meaning. Think of your own life. How many patterns have you lived again and again? How many choices, mistakes, and blessings repeat in different guises? And what might they be asking of you? Perhaps they are urging you to grow, to heal, to see yourself more clearly. Perhaps they are reminders of the deeper rhythm that runs beneath everything, the pulse of existence itself. When you notice the repetition, you are standing at the doorway of insight. The loop is not punishment, it is invitation. As we come toward the end of this reflection, let us circle back to where we began. The strange, uncanny cycles of daily life that feel like programming errors. The same stranger crossing your path, the same song playing everywhere you go, the same arguments, the same dreams. They may unsettle you, they may amuse you, they may leave you wondering. But let them also remind you that life is not chaos but rhythm, not error but pattern. And within the pattern lies possibility. You are not trapped by the loop, you are being taught by it. You are not broken by the cycle, you are being shaped by it. And when you begin to listen, when you lean into the repetition, you may hear the deeper music beneath the noise. So tonight, as you rest, notice your breath repeating, your heart repeating, your thoughts circling back as they always do. Let it comfort you, not frighten you. The loops are not glitches. They are reminders that you are part of a universe woven from rhythm, that you are a participant in a story that echoes itself into meaning. And tomorrow, when you notice a pattern return, pause, smile, and ask yourself not, why is this happening again? But what is life inviting me to see? For in the end, repetition is not error. It is the patient voice of reality itself, repeating until we listen. The Mandela effect, shared false memories that feel real. There are moments in life when memory feels less like a photograph and more like a dream. We close our eyes and recall the past, trusting the images our minds offer us. And yet, sometimes, those images blur, bend, or rearrange themselves into something strange. We may remember a logo a certain way, a phrase from a childhood movie, or the details of an event that shaped history. But then, when we return to the evidence, we discover that what we remember never happened, or at least, not in the way we thought it did. And it leaves us with a curious feeling, a gentle shiver, a whisper that something is off in the fabric of reality. Almost like finding a seam in the wallpaper of the world, a glitch that makes us pause, tilt our head, and ask, why does my memory feel so certain when the truth is different? Stay with me until the end of this reflection, because we are about to wander through the strange country of memory and meaning, through a phenomenon that is both ordinary and otherworldly. It is called the Mandela effect. Memory, for most of us, feels like a private archive, a vault where the past is preserved in careful order. We imagine our brains as librarians, filing away experiences, ready to be retrieved at a moment's notice. But this is an illusion. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not a photograph, but a painting. And each time we recall a moment, we repaint it, adding strokes, smoothing details, sometimes even altering the colors without realizing it. Think about the way you recall your childhood bedroom. Perhaps you see the sunlight streaming through the curtains, the posters on the wall, the toys arranged just so. But if you could step back in time and walk into that room again, you might be surprised at the details you had misplaced, the color of the walls, the size of the bed, the position of the window. We do not keep the past like photographs. We keep it like stories, told and retold, shifting with every telling. And because memory is a living thing, breathing, changing, it can also be wrong. Not just a little wrong, but profoundly so. Not only within us, but between us. This is where the Mandela effect begins to shimmer into focus. The term was first coined by researcher Fiona Broome, who, like many others, vividly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. She remembered news reports, speeches, even global mourning. Except Mandela did not die in prison. He lived on, was released in 1990, and went on to become president of South Africa. He passed away only in 2013. Yet thousands of people shared Broom's memory. They too remembered the televised funeral, the international tributes, the world pausing to honor him decades earlier. How could so many people share a memory that did not match reality? This strange phenomenon became known as the Mandela effect. Since then, countless other examples have surfaced. The children's book series, The Berenstain Bears, many remember it spelled Berenstein. The Monopoly Man, people swear he wears a monocle, though he never has. The line from Star Wars, Luke, I am your father. In reality, the line is, no, I am your father. These are not small slips. They are deeply felt, widely shared recollections. Entire groups of people remembering something with absolute certainty, only to find the truth has always been different. So what is happening here? Why do so many of us carry these false memories as though they were carved in stone? The simplest answer lies in psychology. Memory is fallible, and when we try to recall events, we fill gaps with patterns that make sense. We remember what is familiar, what feels right, what fits the story we have been told. For example, Berenstein feels more natural because many surnames end with Stein. A monocle on the Monopoly Man fits the stereotype of a wealthy gentleman. And Luke, I am your father sounds more direct, more dramatic than the actual line. Our brains are storytellers, and stories often win over facts. But there is something deeper at play. The Mandela effect does not only reveal the weakness of memory, it reveals the power of collective memory. Because it is not just one person misremembering. It is many people, sometimes millions, sharing the same false memory. It is as if human beings, in their effort to make sense of the world, unconsciously synchronize their mistakes. We rewrite history together, and because so many others share the same error, it feels even more real. Throughout history, human beings have been misremembering together. Legends are born this way. A story told in one village becomes altered as it travels to the next. A hero who once lived becomes larger than life. Events are remembered not for what they were, but for what they meant. Consider how myths shape cultures. The details may not be historically accurate, but they contain truths about fear, courage, and longing. Memory, in this sense, is not just about what happened, but about what we need to believe happened. And in daily life, this plays out too. In families, for example, siblings may remember the same holiday differently. One recalls the laughter, the warmth of togetherness. Another recalls tension, an argument at the table. The same event, refracted through two hearts, becomes two separate realities. The Mandela effect magnifies this ordinary truth. It shows us that what we believe about the past is not always what the past actually was. It is a mirror that reflects not only reality, but also imagination. Some, of course, take this further. They wonder, could the Mandela effect be evidence of parallel universes? Timelines brushing against each other, exchanging fragments of memory? Worlds where Mandela did die in prison, worlds where the Monopoly Man does wear a monocle, bleeding into our own? It is an alluring thought, because it suggests that memory is not only fragile, but also cosmic. That when we feel that chill of something being off, we are glimpsing the edges of other realities. There is no scientific proof of this, but there is a kind of poetry in the idea. And sometimes, poetry holds a truth that science alone cannot capture. Still, whether or not parallel worlds are real, one truth remains. Our memories shape who we are. They are the anchors of identity, the threads of our personal stories. And when those memories are questioned, when we realize they may not be reliable, it can feel unsettling. But perhaps there is a gift hidden here. Perhaps the Mandela effect reminds us not to cling too tightly to certainty, to recognize that memory, like life itself, is fluid, ever-changing, and shared. Think of it like a river. You step into it, believing it will always be the same. But the water is always moving, reshaping itself. What you remember stepping into yesterday is not what you step into today. So as we close our journey tonight, I invite you to sit for a moment with this thought. Reality is not only what is written in history books or carved in stone. It is also what we carry in our minds and hearts, our fragile, imperfect, beautiful memories. The Mandela effect may unsettle us, but it also connects us. It shows us that even our mistakes are shared, that we are not alone in the strangeness of remembering. And maybe that is the real magic. Not that our memories are perfect, but that they weave us together in stories, even when the stories are wrong. So the next time you feel certain about something that turns out not to be true, pause. Smile. Remember that memory is less a photograph and more a painting. And every brushstroke, whether accurate or mistaken, is part of the great canvas of being human. Déjà vu, the eerie sensation of reliving a moment. When you are standing in a room, speaking with a friend, or simply turning a corner, and suddenly an invisible hand seems to tap you on the shoulder. For a breathless instant, you feel that you have already lived this moment before. Not in memory exactly, but in sensation, an uncanny familiarity that arrives like a whisper, like a breeze carrying something half forgotten. We have all known this strange stirring. Perhaps it happens in the middle of a conversation, when someone says a phrase you could swear you've already heard, word for word, though you know this is the first time. Or maybe while traveling, when stepping onto a street in a new city, the cobblestones and the tilt of the buildings strike you as if they've belonged to you all along. It is fleeting. It fades almost as soon as it appears. Yet for that brief moment, it feels as though the world is repeating itself, or perhaps you are glimpsing something beyond the ordinary flow of time. This experience has a name we now know well, déjà vu, a French phrase meaning already seen, a poetic description for an experience that slips through the cracks of language and logic. But before we arrive at explanations, before science or philosophy steps in, it's worth dwelling on the mystery itself. What does déjà vu actually feel like? It is more than memory, less than prophecy. It is a sensation of standing in two moments at once, the present moment and a shadowed echo of the present superimposed, like watching your life unfold in duplicate. Some have likened it to a dream half remembered, resurfacing when the world outside suddenly mirrors the fragments inside your mind. Others compare it to the feeling of being in a play, stepping into a scene where the lines and stage directions have been rehearsed long before you arrived. You are both actor and audience, aware of what is happening, yet strangely convinced it has happened already. Stay with me until the end, because what seems at first like a trick of the mind reveals far more than a passing illusion. At its heart, déjà vu holds secrets about memory, about consciousness, about the fragile way we experience time itself. Life usually moves in one direction, forward. Each second vanishes into the past as soon as it arrives. Yet déjà vu unsettles this neat order. It makes the present shimmer with a ghost of the past, as if time is not a line but a loop, one that occasionally overlaps. Think of how a musician tunes a guitar. Two strings are plucked together, and for a moment they sound almost the same, their vibrations nearly in harmony. But when they are just slightly off, you hear a strange trembling, a wave of resonance that feels uncanny. Déjà vu is like that. Two mental strings vibrating almost in unison, memory and perception, present and past, creating an eerie resonance within your mind. Some scientists say it is exactly this, a misfiring of memory, when the brain's machinery mistakenly processes the present as though it were a recollection. The hippocampus, guardian of memory, stumbles and double files an experience. What you see now is accidentally tagged as something you've seen before, a glitch in the code of consciousness. But doesn't that sound too clinical, too mechanical, for something that feels so deeply human? After all, when déjà vu strikes, it rarely feels like a malfunction. Instead, it feels like a revelation, as though the veil of reality has briefly been lifted, as though you are standing in the very rhythm of existence itself, watching the past and the present touch hands. Here, in the middle, is where we pause and open the door wide to understanding. Because déjà vu has drawn the attention of psychologists, neuroscientists, philosophers, even poets for centuries. And in this confluence of perspectives, something extraordinary emerges. Neuroscience tells us that memory is not like a video recording, but more like a living painting, constantly touched up, revised, blurred, and reshaped. Each time we recall something, we don't pull it from a shelf fully intact. We rebuild it, piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle. Which means the line between perception and memory is far thinner than we think. Déjà vu, Then, maybe what happens when the two processes, recording the present and recalling the past, overlap in the brain. A new experience, so familiar in shape or structure to something stored in memory, activates recognition before reason. You remember the present because it fits too snugly into the architecture of memory. But here is the deeper, more poetic truth. Déjà vu is not just about memory. It is about the way our minds are forever searching for patterns, forever stitching fragments into meaning. Our brains are restless storytellers, and when confronted with the unfamiliar, they reach into the archive of the familiar to make sense of it. Déjà vu is the echo of that process, the ghost of a story your mind is writing in real time. Think of it this way. Life gives us countless puzzle pieces, scattered and unconnected. From sights, sounds, scents, and gestures, the mind builds mosaics. Occasionally, one new piece fits so perfectly into an old space that it creates the illusion you've seen the whole picture before. Déjà vu is the moment of recognition when the pieces align. But déjà vu does not wear one mask only. There are variations of the sensation, cousins in the same family of strangeness. There is déjà vu, already lived, a stronger, more intense form, in which not only the sight but the entire experience feels as though it is repeating itself. Then there is déjà senti, already felt, a sudden emotional recognition, when a mood or atmosphere feels uncannily familiar. And even déjà visite, already visited, that haunting sensation of arriving at a place for the first time, but feeling that your footsteps already know the way. Cultures across history have given these moments their own interpretations. Some ancient traditions saw déjà vu as evidence of reincarnation, proof that the soul has walked these paths before. Mystics called it a glimpse of parallel worlds brushing against each other, a reminder that we live in more than one layer of reality. Writers and artists, too, have long been fascinated by it. In literature, déjà vu often appears as a symbol of fate, of cycles, of lives bound by mysterious threads. In film, it becomes a portal. Think of how entire stories hinge on characters trapped in loops of time, each repetition unlocking a deeper truth. Outside of laboratories and legends, déjà vu lives quietly in our ordinary days. In relationships, it might appear when you meet someone new and feel an instant, unexplainable bond, as though you've shared countless conversations already. In travel, it might whisper to you on a street corner, in a restaurant, in the way a stranger gestures with their hands. It is in the way a song you've never heard before can stir a familiarity that aches. It is in the way certain smells, coffee brewing, rain on stone, a certain perfume, trigger a memory you cannot quite name. These small intrusions remind us that life is not entirely under our control, that the mind holds more mysteries than we care to admit. They remind us, too, that memory and imagination are constantly entangled, shaping how we move through the present. So the next time déjà vu finds you, whether in the tilt of light through a window or the cadence of a friend's laughter, do not rush to dismiss it as a mere glitch. Pause instead. Breathe. Notice how it reminds you that you are not just passing through time, but also weaving it. That your life is both brand new and deeply ancient at once. For déjà vu is not only about repetition. It is about recognition. It is a mirror in which we see the mind reaching for continuity in a world that is always slipping away. And perhaps that is why it lingers in us long after the sensation has faded. Because deep down, we long to believe that life is not a random scattering of moments, but a pattern, one we have known before and will know again. When you close your eyes tonight, think of the moments you've lived twice, those brief echoes of eternity. Let them remind you that your story is larger than you imagine, that even in the most ordinary days, time itself sometimes pauses to whisper, "You have been here before." Time slips, people claiming to briefly travel to another era. There are moments in life when the ordinary fabric of time feels thinner than usual. You might be walking through a familiar park, the air warm, the sound of footsteps echoing against the pavement, when suddenly the present seems to waver. For an instant, the world you know flickers and another takes its place. Streets lined with old-fashioned lamps, clothing styles out of step with the modern day, voices speaking in a rhythm that feels borrowed from another age. You blink, and just as quickly, the vision is gone. Yet what lingers is not just confusion, but the unsettling certainty that you have brushed against a different era. Most of us dismiss such feelings as imagination, or the play of memory, or the strange unreliability of perception. But for some, the experience runs deeper, leaving them convinced that, however briefly, they stepped outside their own time. These are the stories of what many call time slips. Before we dive into the heart of the mystery, let us reflect on something simple: how fragile and elastic our experience of time already is. Think about how a moment of deep joy can feel fleeting, as though it slips through your fingers before you've even had the chance to hold it. Or how pain and sorrow seem to stretch a second into an eternity, each tick of the clock dragging slowly. Time, we are told, moves in one direction, measured with precision by the gears of clocks and the vibrations of atomic particles. And yet the way we live it is anything but straight and even. It stretches and contracts, it bends with memory, it loops in dreams. Time is not just a physical phenomenon. It is also an emotional and psychological one. Because of this, we should not be too quick to dismiss those who claim that time can occasionally do more than bend. That, in rare moments, it can break open. For centuries, people have reported experiences that seem to defy the ordinary flow. They tell of stepping into a street that suddenly looks different, populated with people dressed in old styles, only to return to the present within minutes. They describe a mist or a sudden silence before finding themselves surrounded by a world decades, or even centuries, removed from their own. Such accounts often read like dream sequences, yet the people who share them insist they were awake, aware, and fully conscious. The middle of this reflection is where we must linger, for this is where the most important insight lies. Time slips, whether literal or metaphorical, tell us something profound about the nature of reality and the human mind. Psychologists and neuroscientists suggest that these episodes may be extreme misfires of memory and perception. The brain, with its vast archive of images, sounds, and cultural fragments, sometimes overlays the present with impressions drawn from the past. A street corner you've never visited might resemble one you've seen in an old photograph, a costume drama, or a childhood book illustration, and in a moment of intensity, the brain fuses them into lived experience. From this view, a time slip is not a journey through time, but a collision of perception and memory, a vivid hallucination rooted in the mind's endless hunger to make meaning. Yet this explanation, as tidy as it may be, does not capture the full weight of the stories, because those who have lived through a time slip do not describe them as hazy or dreamlike. On the contrary, they often report them as more real than the present, with sharp sensory detail and an uncanny clarity. They speak of the smell of smoke from old lanterns, the sound of horse hooves against cobblestones, or the texture of clothing brushes as strangers pass by. If these are merely the brain's inventions, then the brain is capable of painting whole worlds with startling precision, which perhaps is not so far-fetched when we remember that imagination itself is one of our greatest powers, the ability to inhabit worlds that are not here, to rehearse futures not yet born, to reanimate pasts long gone. Time slips have found their place in folklore and history, woven into stories of haunted places and sacred landscapes. In Liverpool, England, there are tales of people who walked through a shopping district only to find themselves transported to the early 20th century, the modern storefronts replaced with older facades, shopkeepers dressed in styles of decades past. In Versailles, France, two women in the early 1900s famously claimed to have wandered into the gardens of the palace and found themselves in the company of figures from the late 18th century, including, they believed, Marie Antoinette herself. Whether these accounts are factual or embellished, they linger in cultural memory because they speak to our deep unease and deep fascination with time's boundaries. Across cultures, time slips have been explained in many ways. Some see them as evidence of parallel worlds brushing against each other, moments when two dimensions briefly overlap. Others interpret them spiritually, as echoes of reincarnation or ancestral memory, a reminder that we carry within us the lives of those who came before. There are also those who suggest a more physical explanation, that time is not linear at all, but layered, and that under certain conditions, psychological states, magnetic fields, places heavy with history, the layers can touch. In these accounts, the past does not vanish but continues to exist alongside us, just usually out of reach. But what does this mean for our ordinary lives, you might ask? How do time slips, whether real or imagined, connect with the world we wake to each morning? In a sense, they remind us that time itself is a mystery we often take for granted. Every photograph, every memory, every tradition is a kind of time slip. When you listen to an old song, and it transports you instantly back to a childhood room or a summer afternoon decades ago, are you not slipping in time? When a story told by an elder carries you into a world that no longer exists, when you hold an object passed down through generations and feel the presence of hands long gone, these are everyday reminders that the past is not sealed away. It flows through us, it lingers in our senses, it colors our present. And there is something profoundly human in our yearning to visit other times. It is why we build museums, why we preserve ruins, why we write history books and novels. It is why cinema so often returns to the past or projects us into imagined futures. We do not live only in the present moment. Our minds are travelers by nature, stepping into times that do not belong to us. The stories of time slips, then, are perhaps extreme expressions of a universal truth. That time is not simply something we pass through, but something we carry within us, fractured and fluid. So the next time you find yourself lost in reverie, standing on a street where the architecture whispers of another century, or listening to music that makes the years collapse, do not hurry to pull yourself back. Allow yourself to linger. Feel how the present is stitched with threads of the past and the future. Perhaps you are not traveling in time in the literal sense, but you are experiencing something just as remarkable: the ability of consciousness to move across layers of existence, to bridge the impossible distances between then, now, and what might yet be. And if, one day, you should find yourself in the middle of a true time slip, suddenly seeing a stranger in Victorian dress, or hearing the echo of voices from another century, pause and breathe deeply. Whether it is a trick of the mind or a glimpse into a larger reality, it is still a gift, a reminder that the world is vaster and more mysterious than we imagine. That time is not only a river carrying us forward, but also a sea with hidden currents, eddies, and whirlpools. Sometimes, if only for a moment, we drift into one of those hidden streams and glimpse a shore we were never meant to see. In the end, time slips leave us with more questions than answers. But perhaps that is their purpose, to remind us that reality is not a closed box, that the boundaries we take for granted are softer than we think. They invite us to walk with a little more wonder, to listen for the echoes beneath the ordinary sounds of the day, to feel the presence of other times shimmering just beneath the surface of our own. And when you close your eyes tonight, drifting towards sleep, consider how every dream is a kind of time travel, how every memory is a journey, how every heartbeat is both ancient and immediate. Let the thought comfort you, that time is not a prison but a vast landscape, and that sometimes, for reasons we cannot explain, we are allowed to glimpse more of it than we expected. Missing time phenomenon, gaps in memory with no clear explanation. There are moments in life when time does not feel steady, moments when the clock seems to skip, as though some unseen hand has reached out and pressed fast forward on reality. You might be walking home under the glow of streetlights, thinking about something small and unimportant, when suddenly you arrive at your door with no recollection of the journey. Or perhaps you glance at the clock in the evening, only to look back again what feels like minutes later and find that hours have passed. At first, such moments seem trivial, quirks of attention, lapses of memory. But for some, the gaps run deeper, more unsettling, more inexplicable. Entire hours vanish without trace. A meeting, a conversation, a drive down a lonely road, gone from conscious recall, as though time itself were stolen. This is the phenomenon people call missing time. Before we explore it, pause and think about how fragile memory already is. Most of us live under the illusion that we are recording our lives like a camera, storing moments neatly, each one available for playback. Yet the truth is stranger. Memory is not a perfect archive, but a story that is rewritten each time we recall it. A song might remind you of a summer afternoon, yet when you compare your memory with another person who was there, the details differ. Even the most important moments, a wedding, a graduation, a goodbye, shift subtly each time we revisit them. If this is the nature of ordinary memory, how then should we understand the absence of memory, the complete erasure of time? Missing time is not just forgetting. It is not misplacing your keys or losing track of a sentence mid-thought. It is a blankness, a void, an awareness that something should be there but is not. Here is where the heart of the phenomenon reveals itself. Psychologists often point to dissociation, a mental process in which the mind, overwhelmed by stress or trauma, detaches from awareness. In these moments, time can pass without registering. The body moves, the world continues, but the conscious self steps aside. Neurologists might speak of seizures, microsleeps, or rare disruptions in brain function that create gaps in perception. Those explanations are rational, grounded in the machinery of the mind, and yet they leave untouched the subjective strangeness of missing time. Because those who experience it often describe not only a gap, but also the eerie certainty that something happened in that missing stretch, something important, something hidden just beyond the reach of memory. It is not simply absence they feel, but presence denied. This is why missing time has become such fertile ground for folklore, mystery, and speculation. In modern culture, it is often tied to tales of UFO encounters, where witnesses report seeing a strange light in the sky, and then, in what feels like an instant, discover that hours have vanished. They find themselves disoriented, their watches advanced, their memories scrambled. In these accounts, the missing time is not random but purposeful, as if the gap conceals an experience too unsettling to surface. But the phenomenon stretches beyond extraterrestrial tales. Throughout history, people have told of fairy abductions, where travelers step into a ring of enchantment, dance for what feels like minutes, and return to find years have passed. In shamanic traditions, journeys into altered states often involve losing track of time altogether, returning to ordinary reality with only fragments of what transpired. In daily life, too, we brush against gentler versions of this mystery. Have you ever driven a long stretch of road and suddenly realized you cannot remember the last 10 miles? Your hands were steering, your eyes watching, yet your mind was elsewhere. Or have you ever been so immersed in a book, a film, or a task that hours passed unnoticed? We call this flow when it feels positive, but beneath it lies the same enigma. Time experienced, yet not recorded. Missing time exists on a spectrum, from the benign lapses of everyday life to the profound, unnerving blanks that leave people questioning the boundaries of their reality. Culturally, we interpret these gaps in many ways. Science frames them as neurological hiccups, products of stress, fatigue, or the delicate wiring of the brain. Spiritual traditions sometimes see them as thresholds, moments when the soul steps outside the body, touching realms where ordinary time does not apply. Folklore wraps them in cautionary tales. Do not wander too deep into the forest. Do not ignore the sound of bells, for you may return to find the world changed. Each culture dresses the mystery in its own language, but the core remains the same: the human fear and wonder of not knowing where a piece of life has gone. What makes missing time so powerful is not only the gaps themselves, but what they suggest. They force us to question whether our sense of continuity, our thread of selfhood, is as solid as we believe. We think of identity as a story told moment by moment, each memory linked to the next like beads on a string. But when the string frays, when whole sections are missing, we confront the fragility of that story. Who are we, if not the sum of remembered moments? What happens to our sense of self when some of those moments vanish? And yet, perhaps missing time is not always a theft. Perhaps it is also a mercy. There are wounds the mind protects us from by refusing to store them, moments too painful to hold that are quietly erased. There are even moments of grace hidden in these gaps, the timelessness of deep meditation, the slipping away of hours in laughter, the way sleep itself pulls us into oblivion so that we might wake renewed. Missing time, in its many forms, reminds us that not all of life is meant to be accounted for. Some parts must remain mysterious, outside the ledger of memory. So the next time you notice a gap, Whether in the middle of a long drive, or a night out that blurs into silence, or even in the larger absences of memory that haunt families and lives, pause before rushing to fill it with explanations. Consider that these gaps are part of what it means to be human. They are places where the linear story breaks, where something larger stirs, be it the mind's own defenses, the weight of mystery, or perhaps currents of time and reality we have not yet learned to measure. Missing time is unsettling, yes, but it also carries a quiet gift. The reminder that we do not control every aspect of our existence, that our lives are shaped as much by what is absent as by what is present. As you drift toward sleep tonight, think of your own memories not as a flawless archive, but as a patchwork quilt, full of colors, patterns, and textures, but also spaces where fabric has worn thin. The gaps are part of the design. They do not diminish the story, they make it human. And perhaps, in the end, the missing hours, the missing moments, the missing years remind us of something essential, that life is not defined only by what we can hold on to, but also by what slips through our fingers. Time is not a chain, but a river. Sometimes we swim with it, sometimes we lose ourselves in its currents, and sometimes, just sometimes, we wake to find that a stretch has passed us by, leaving behind a silence we may never fully explain. Parallel universe theories, glitches as possible overlaps between realities. The world feels strangely fragile, as if the edges of reality are thinner than we believe, as if a small tear in the fabric of the ordinary could let another version of existence slip through. You might have felt it in passing, perhaps when you were certain you placed your keys on the table, but moments later they appear in another room, or when you meet a stranger who swears they already know you, though you cannot recall their face. Some describe this as coincidence, others as forgetfulness, but deep down there lingers a quiet unease, the sense that something larger is brushing against the borders of our daily life. We live most of our days assuming the world is solid, linear, continuous, but then a strange moment, a déjà vu, a misplaced object, a sentence heard twice in the same way, makes us pause. Could it be that what we call glitches in reality are not mistakes at all, but hints, overlaps, echoes from somewhere else? To entertain such an idea is to open a door into one of the most haunting and beautiful possibilities of human thought, the existence of parallel universes. To approach this idea, we must begin by looking at how we think about reality itself. Our ordinary days are built on the assumption that what we see and feel is the whole of existence, that time flows in one direction, that every choice we make seals the fate of what follows. Yet, physicists, philosophers, and dreamers alike have long suggested that the world may not be so simple. Reality, according to certain theories, is not one continuous thread but a vast tapestry woven with countless strands, each representing a possible version of events. Imagine a tree, its trunk rising from the ground, solid and singular, but as it grows, it branches outward. Each branch represents a possibility, each twig an outcome, each leaf a moment lived differently. If this is true, then our lives may not be singular journeys, but just one path among infinite others, branching and twisting through realities we cannot see. The strange glitches we sometimes feel, the sudden dislocation of time, the eerie sense of repeating an action, the impossibility of an object moving on its own, could be the tiny places where two branches brush against each other, where realities overlap. Here, at the heart of the theory, lies both its wonder and its unease. Physics has offered us frameworks that stretch our imagination beyond comfort. The many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every decision, every quantum event, splits reality into versions where each possibility is realized. In one world, you take the train. In another, you miss it. In one world, you say yes. In another, you walk away. Most of these parallel worlds are forever beyond our perception, flowing beside ours without contact. And yet, people report moments that seem to contradict this. Moments when something leaks through, when the boundaries falter. These are the glitches that spark wonder. A person turns a corner in their hometown and finds a street that, by every map, should not exist. Someone swears that a building stood in a certain spot for years, yet suddenly, it is gone and no one else remembers it. People speak of the Mandela effect, where entire groups share false memories of history, as though they recall events from a different version of the world. These reports may be explained away as memory errors, collective confusion, tricks of the mind. But they may also be read as whispers of something greater, the brushing together of parallel realities, fleeting overlaps where the impossible momentarily becomes real. And yet, let us not only chase the uncanny. Consider how parallel universes mirror our inner lives. Each of us carries regrets, paths not taken, choices we sometimes revisit in imagination. What if I had stayed? What if I had spoken? What if I had turned left instead of right? These are not just idle thoughts. They are living visions of alternate selves, possible lives that shadow our current one. The theory of parallel universes gives a poetic shape to these feelings. It suggests that perhaps those imagined versions of us are not just dreams, but real in some other unfolding reality. Somewhere, another you made the opposite choice and lives with its consequences. The glitch in reality then becomes more than a scientific mystery. It becomes a metaphor for the way we sense those other lives, as if the heart sometimes catches an echo of itself across the branches of the tree. Across cultures and centuries, stories have carried this intuition long before science gave it language. Folktales of travelers who slip into other worlds, myths of mirrored lands just beyond the horizon, legends of twin realities where time runs differently. These are ancient ways of touching the same mystery. The Celts spoke of the other world, a realm parallel to our own, entered by chance through mist or a ring of stones. In Japanese folklore, tales of spirits describe slipping between worlds through forests and temples. Even religious visions, heavens, hells, spirit planes, carry echoes of layered realities coexisting with our own. And in our age of science fiction, writers and filmmakers imagine universes stacked like pages in a book, each one as real as the next. These are not only entertainments, but also mirrors of our deepest wondering. What if our world is not the only one? And what if sometimes the ink smudges, the pages blur, and we glimpse the print from another chapter? But how do we live with such an idea? Does it unsettle or comfort us to think that we may not be alone, that countless other versions of ourselves exist? If glitches are indeed overlaps between realities, then each strange moment we dismiss as coincidence could be a quiet reminder that reality is vast, layered, and more fragile than we imagine. Perhaps it is no accident that many of these reported glitches happen in the ordinary moments of life. Walking through familiar streets, looking at the clock, speaking with a friend. They remind us that the extraordinary hides within the ordinary, that the very fabric of the mundane may ripple with mysteries we have not yet measured. And perhaps that is the true gift of these theories, whether or not they are proven. They awaken us to wonder, to the possibility that reality is more than we can see, that we are participants in a story so much larger than ourselves. So when you think back to that strange moment, the time you lost an hour without explanation, the memory you share with others that history denies, the sense that you have lived this exact day before, pause before you dismiss it. Instead, hold it gently, as you might hold a seashell to your ear. Listen to the echo it carries, the suggestion of another ocean beyond your own. Science may one day explain it, may confirm or deny the existence of parallel universes. But in the meantime, the mystery itself is valuable. It invites us to imagine, to expand, to reflect on how little we truly know about the nature of reality. As you settle into quiet now, consider that life itself may be layered, like sheets of translucent paper stacked together, each one carrying a version of the story. Sometimes the sheets align perfectly, and we see only one picture. Sometimes they shift, and the images overlap, blurring in ways that confuse us. Missing objects, misplaced memories, impossible coincidences. These may be the shadows of other pages pressing against our own. And whether you see them as errors of the mind, as hints of the soul, or as science yet to be understood, they remind us of the same thing, that existence is not a fixed wall but a doorway. The universe we know is vast, yes, but perhaps it is only one room in an endless house. And sometimes, when the lights flicker or the walls grow thin, we glimpse the glow of another room just beyond, calling to us in silence. Matrix-like coincidences, strange coincidences that defy logic. When life feels scripted, as if the invisible hand of some unseen writer is placing events in front of us with deliberate timing, arranging the characters and moments in ways too precise to be explained by chance alone. You might be walking down a street lost in thought, and suddenly, the very word that lingers on your lips is spoken by a passerby. You may dream of a song you have not heard in years, only to find it playing the next morning in a cafe. A stranger you met once years ago appears at the exact moment you needed help, as though summoned by an unknown force. These are the moments we call coincidences, yet sometimes they feel too perfect, too pointed, too surreal to dismiss. It is here, in these small but startling overlaps, that we brush against the unsettling idea of living in a world far more mysterious than we assume. Some call it fate, others synchronicity, and in our modern age, many have begun to call it something else entirely, a glitch in the matrix. We begin, as we often do, with the assumption that reality is solid and untangled, that events occur randomly, following no deeper order beyond probability. We tell ourselves that the universe is vast and our lives are brief, so of course strange alignments will occasionally occur. But if you have ever been caught in a chain of coincidences so uncanny it feels orchestrated, you know that logic struggles to contain the feeling. It is not simply the event itself, but the timing, the eerie sense that life is speaking directly to you through patterns. Perhaps you are thinking of an old friend, and at that exact moment, your phone lights up with their name. Perhaps you repeat a rare word aloud and instantly hear it echoed on television in the background. The world begins to feel like a mirror, reflecting your private thoughts outward. It is in this uncanny space that people wonder, are we truly living in a random universe? Or are we inside something like a program, a design, a woven story where these moments of alignment are hints that the structure is showing through? This is where the metaphor of the Matrix takes hold. The 1999 film gave popular culture a vocabulary for what philosophers had long debated. The idea that our reality may not be the final reality, but an elaborate construction. And while most of us do not literally believe we are plugged into machines, the sensation of encountering a matrix-like coincidence gives us a taste of what it would feel like if the code of existence flickered in front of our eyes. We are left with questions that resist easy answers. Was it chance, or was it signal? Did we witness randomness, or a glimpse of a deeper order? Science, psychology, and spirituality all offer different lenses. Statisticians will remind us that coincidences are inevitable when billions of people are constantly experiencing billions of moments. Psychologists suggest that our pattern-hungry brains are wired to connect unrelated events into meaningful stories. Yet, mystics and philosophers speak differently. They say these moments are whispers of connection, glimpses of a hidden fabric binding all things together. In the middle of this debate sits the ordinary person who has just lived through something that defies explanation, a moment too strange to ignore, and the question lingers, could it really be random? The heart of the matter is not just probability, but meaning. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences, events that align not because of direct cause and effect, but because they resonate with the inner state of the observer. In this view, coincidences are not accidents, but mirrors between the outer world and the inner psyche. A thought, an image, a dream inside you connects with something outside you, and in that alignment, meaning is born. Jung believed such moments revealed the interconnectedness of all things, as if reality itself could listen and respond. Think of the times you have been wrestling with a question, uncertain which direction to take, and then, through sheer coincidence, a phrase appears in a book, a conversation overheard, or a sign on a passing bus that seems to answer you directly. Logic tells us it is random, yet in your bones, it feels as though the world has spoken. That sense, that shiver of recognition, is what gives coincidences their power. They awaken us, if only for a moment, to the possibility that reality is participatory, that we are not separate from the story but inside it. Once you begin to look, history and culture are overflowing with such tales. Ancient texts often describe kings and prophets guided by omens and chance encounters. In Greek myth, oracles spoke in riddles that aligned eerily with events yet to unfold. In Chinese philosophy, The I Ching has been used for thousands of years to find meaning in the chance pattern of coins, a structured way of asking the universe to speak through coincidence. In literature, too, coincidences are often the hinge of the story. The stranger who turns out to be the missing heir, the meeting at a crossroads that changes a life. Shakespeare used coincidences not as accidents, but as signs of destiny, threads in a pattern the audience could see even if the characters could not. And in our own lives, even in the age of technology and rational science, coincidences continue to humble us. Think of the stories told after tragedies or triumphs. One person missing a doomed train by sheer chance, another meeting their lifelong partner after a cascade of unlikely events. These are not just stories of luck. They are experiences where chance bends into the shape of meaning, where reality feels less like a machine and more like a woven tapestry. But perhaps the deepest resonance of matrix-like coincidences lies in the personal. They touch us because they remind us of the fragility and wonder of being alive. They tell us that the boundaries we assume between self and world may not be as clear as they seem. Have you ever noticed how often coincidences arrive at moments of transition? When you are uncertain, when you are searching, when you are on the threshold of change. It is as though reality leans closer during these times, as though the program, if such a thing exists, lets a bit of its structure shine through just when you are most open to noticing. Whether this is illusion or revelation may matter less than how it feels. For in the end, the power of a coincidence is not only in its impossibility, but in its invitation. It invites you to pause, to reflect, to ask questions you might otherwise rush past. It invites you to feel, if only for a heartbeat, that you are part of something vast and interconnected. And so, we circle back to the beginning. Are these moments glitches in the matrix, errors in the code, reminders that we are living inside a simulation? Or are they synchronicities, reflections of the inner psyche in the outer world? Are they merely statistical inevitabilities dressed up by human imagination? The truth may never settle cleanly into one explanation. But what matters is that these experiences move us. They awaken awe, and awe is one of the most profoundly human experiences we can know. To live in a world without wonder is to live half asleep. To live in a world where even coincidences can stir us is to be alive in full color. So the next time you encounter such a moment, the name that repeats across your path, the phrase that follows you from book to billboard to strangers' lips, pause. Smile at it. Hold it gently. Whether it is a glitch in the matrix, a whisper from the universe, or simply the dance of probability, it has found you. And in that instant, you and the world are no longer strangers, but partners in a conversation that has no end. Unexplained doppelgangers. Encounters with someone's identical double. There are moments in life when the world seems to play with mirrors, when the ordinary rhythm of existence is interrupted by something that makes us pause, unsettled yet strangely fascinated. You may have felt it in the sudden recognition of a face across the crowd that looks uncannily familiar, or in the uncanny sensation that someone you have known for years is standing before you twice, as though multiplied. Most of the time, our encounters follow a predictable order. The people we know look as they should, the strangers we pass carry their own uniqueness. But every now and then, we hear a story or live one ourselves where that logic fractures. Two versions of the same face appear in the same world. Two identical selves occupy different spaces. This is the unsettling and beautiful mystery of the doppelganger. It begins innocently enough, often brushed off with laughter or disbelief. A friend insists they saw you yesterday on a street you have never walked, carrying a bag you do not own. A stranger greets you warmly, convinced you are someone else entirely, someone who shares your face, your mannerisms, perhaps even your voice. Sometimes it is more haunting. A traveler looks across a station and sees their own mirror image boarding a train. A woman looks into a cafe window and sees herself already seated inside. These tales are not only stories of resemblance. They touch on something deeper, an echo of the self that seems to live outside the self. At first glance, we might explain it away as chance, as the world's wide variety creating accidental doubles. But doppelganger encounters rarely feel accidental. They feel staged, deliberate, charged with a meaning that resists dismissal. Psychology, culture, and folklore all converge on this phenomenon. yet none explain it fully. The word doppelganger comes from German, meaning double goer, a double who walks alongside you unseen. In folklore, the doppelganger is an omen, a shadow self whose appearance signals misfortune or death. Writers like Goethe, Dostoevsky, and Edgar Allan Poe drew on this eerie symbolism, using doubles to embody guilt, fear, or the struggle between two sides of a soul. Even in modern times, the idea lingers in our imagination. To meet your double is not just strange, but profoundly unsettling, as though reality itself has conjured a reflection to remind you that your identity is not as singular as you believe. Why should this be so disturbing? Perhaps because we spend our lives anchored in the assumption that we are unique, that the face in the mirror belongs only to us. To see that face walking freely in the world, detached from the body we inhabit, shakes the very foundation of the self. Here, in the center of the mystery, lies the heart of the matter. The encounter with a doppelganger forces us to ask a question we usually avoid. What does it mean to be me? We are used to thinking of ourselves as singular beings, unrepeatable, the one and only bearer of our particular face, our particular life. Yet, when someone swears they have seen us elsewhere, or when we confront our own likeness in the flesh, it is as if the universe is saying, "You are not one but many." In psychological terms, the doppelganger may be understood as a projection of the unconscious, a symbol of the parts of ourselves we deny or repress. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the double we do not want to face, but who walks beside us nonetheless. In cultural and mystical terms, the doppelganger is the soul's echo, a ghostly twin that exists just beyond perception. In scientific terms, some explanations point to memory errors, mistaken identities, or the brain's habit of pattern recognition gone too far. Yet, none of these explanations fully dissolves the eerie power of the experience itself. When someone meets their double, it is not experienced as confusion. It is experienced as revelation, a tearing open of the curtain between worlds. After all, doppelgangers do not only haunt folklore. History is dotted with accounts that defy simple dismissal. The poet Percy Bysshe Shelley claimed to have seen his own double shortly before his death, a vision that felt like a premonition. Abraham Lincoln is said to have glimpsed a doubled reflection of himself in a mirror, pale and ghostly, a vision that unsettled him deeply. Catherine the Great's servants reported seeing her double seated on the throne while she herself was elsewhere, a sight that left them trembling. Whether these are legends exaggerated over time or true accounts, their persistence across cultures suggests something deeply human in the fascination with doubles. Even in our age of photographs, videos, and endless records, reports continue to surface. Travelers meeting people indistinguishable from themselves in foreign cities. Family members swearing they saw someone arrive home hours before they truly did. Passers-by convinced that two people with the same face occupied the same space at once. These are not only curiosities. They are lived experiences that leave those involved shaken. And yet, if we step back from fear, there is another way to view the doppelganger, not as omen, but as metaphor. Each of us carries multiple versions of ourselves within us. The self we show to others, the self we hide, the self we dream of becoming, the self we left behind. The double can be read as the embodiment of these unseen versions. To meet your doppelganger is to be confronted not only with your face, but with the truth that your identity is layered, complex, and not as fixed as you believe. Perhaps this is why literature so often uses the double to explore themes of morality, guilt, and transformation. The doppelganger reminds us that we are not singular, that we are many, and that the line between those selves is thinner than we think. Still, the mystery remains. Why do so many people report real encounters with doubles outside the symbolic world of art? One possibility lies in the sheer scale of humanity. With billions of faces in existence, chance lookalikes are statistically inevitable. Yet this explanation cannot fully account for the uncanny timing, the way doubles often appear at critical or transitional moments in a person's life. Some researchers suggest that these encounters may be connected to altered states of consciousness, moments of stress, exhaustion, or emotional intensity where perception falters. Others lean toward more esoteric interpretations, suggesting that doppelgangers may be glimpses of parallel selves, echoes from alternate realities brushing against our own. In this view, when we meet our double, we are not seeing a stranger at all. We are seeing another version of ourselves, one who lives a slightly different story in a slightly different world. Whether this is fantasy or truth, it resonates deeply with the human sense that we are more than just one life, more than just one version of a face. And so we arrive at the deeper reflection. Perhaps the reason doppelganger stories haunt us is because they remind us that identity is both fragile and mysterious. To see yourself outside yourself is to realize that the boundaries of selfhood are porous, that I is not as absolute as it feels. In some cultures, the double is feared because it represents death, the moment when the soul leaves the body. In others, it is revered as a spiritual twin, a guide who walks beside us unseen. In our own lives, it may serve as a reminder that the person we think we are is always accompanied by the people we might have been, the selves we carry within us, but do not always meet. So the next time you hear a story of a doppelganger, or if you find yourself in the unsettling presence of someone who carries your face, pause before you rush to explanation. Allow yourself to feel the weight of the mystery. Whether it is chance, psychology, shadow, or signal from another world, it speaks to the same truth, that the self is not a fixed point, but a shifting constellation. You are one, and yet you are many. You are singular, and yet you are echoed. To live with this awareness is not to fear, but to wonder, to see life not as a narrow path, but as a wide field, where every step is mirrored by steps unseen. And perhaps, in the end, that is the gift of the doppelganger, to remind us that we are never entirely alone, that even in our most private being, we are accompanied by versions of ourselves we have not yet met. Dreams that predict reality, prophetic dreams that come true. There are moments in life when the veil between sleep and waking feels impossibly thin, moments when the shadows of our dreams cling to us like dew on morning grass. And in those quiet spaces, we sometimes stumble upon something that feels far more than imagination, something that feels like a secret glimpse into tomorrow. And perhaps you have felt it too, that eerie sensation of waking from a dream only to discover, days or months later, that the dream has played itself out in reality with uncanny precision. Tonight, I want you to sit with me in this mystery, to walk slowly through the corridors of this strange phenomenon, and I ask you to stay until the end, for what we will uncover is not just about dreams, but about the very way we think about time, memory, and possibility. Dreams are one of the few universal experiences. Every human across every culture and century dreams, even those who rarely remember them. And yet within this universality lies an ocean of mystery. We dream of impossible landscapes. We dream of people long gone. We dream of fears that haunt us and desires that call to us. But sometimes, unexpectedly, we dream of things that have not yet happened, and when reality arrives to meet the dream, we are left shaken. Was it coincidence, intuition, or prophecy? The rational mind insists it must be the first, but the heart whispers otherwise. To step deeper into this, let us first consider what dreams are. Science tells us that dreams emerge as our brain cycles through different states of sleep, particularly in the REM stage, when neural activity resembles waking thought. They are the mind's stage play, rehearsing fears, cataloging memory, and weaving fragments of our day into symbolic stories. Yet science also acknowledges the predictive nature of the brain. Our minds are pattern recognition engines, designed to anticipate danger, forecast outcomes, and prepare us for the future. Perhaps prophetic dreams, then, are a product of this. Our unconscious mind noticing what our conscious eye ignores, drawing conclusions before we are ready to face them, presenting them in the symbolic language of dream. And yet, this explanation, as comforting as it may be to reason, falters when the details are too precise, when the dream aligns with the future not in broad strokes, but in exact words, places, and events. In these moments, logic feels like a net too small to catch the enormity of what we experience. Throughout history, humanity has wrestled with this enigma. The ancients revered dreams as messages from gods or ancestors. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets record dreams as omens. The Egyptians kept dream interpreters within their temples. The Greeks built the Asclepian sanctuaries, where seekers slept in hope of divine dreams that could heal the body or guide the spirit. In the Bible, Joseph's dreams not only saved Egypt from famine but reshaped the course of nations. Across indigenous traditions, dreams were often seen as portals to wisdom, with elders guiding their communities through visions of what lay ahead. Even in our modern world, where science reigns and skepticism is a mark of sophistication, stories persist. Abraham Lincoln spoke of a dream in which he wandered the White House and found mourners gathered around a coffin. Days later, he was assassinated. Mark Twain dreamt of his brother's death before it occurred. Countless ordinary people tell stories of plane crashes foreseen, disasters anticipated, or moments of love and loss glimpsed before they unfolded. It is here, at the heart of these stories, that we encounter the most unsettling possibility. What if dreams are not only psychological processes, but also windows into the fabric of time itself? What if, in sleep, the linear march of past, present, and future softens, allowing fragments of tomorrow to spill backward into today? Physics, after all, whispers of time as something more malleable than we once believed. In Einstein's relativity, time is bound to space, curved by gravity, stretched by speed. Quantum theory, with its entanglements and probabilities, hints that the universe may not unfold in a straight line, but in a weave of possibilities, and perhaps our dreams brush against those threads. For most of us, time is an arrow pointing forward. But what if it is instead a vast ocean, and our dreams are the currents that sometimes carry us into places we have not yet reached? Pause with me here, because this is the crux of the mystery, the place where science and story, reason and wonder meet. If prophetic dreams are real, what are they telling us? Are they gifts, warnings, accidents of perception, or proof that the human mind is connected to something far larger than itself? Some argue that these dreams are examples of selective memory. We dream many things, forget most, and only recall those rare ones that match reality. Others suggest intuition. Our brains, brilliant at assembling tiny unnoticed clues, create dreams that feel prophetic when the predicted event arrives. But for those who have felt the chill of dreaming something precise, the face of a stranger later met, the detail of a disaster later lived, explanations falter. For them, the experience is undeniable, leaving them with a quiet awe, or sometimes a quiet fear. And yet, not all prophetic dreams are catastrophic. Some are tender, subtle, even joyous. Imagine dreaming of meeting someone new, and days later, a stranger enters your life who feels strangely familiar. Imagine dreaming of a decision, a move, a career, a relationship, and later recognizing the dream's guidance when you stand at that crossroads. In these ways, dreams sometimes act not as foreboding omens, but as gentle companions, reminders that our lives are threaded with meaning even when we cannot see it in waking hours. Cultures across the world have found inspiration in these mysterious experiences. Poets like Samuel Taylor Coleridge composed verses born of dream. Scientists like Kekulé glimpsed the shape of the benzene ring in sleep. Artists and musicians have awoken with melodies and visions that transformed culture itself. Dreams, prophetic or not, have always served as bridges between the known and the unknown, between the waking world and the landscapes of imagination. In our personal lives, too, prophetic dreams carry weight. They can act as mirrors, reflecting what we most need to see. Sometimes they warn us, nudging us to pay attention to dangers or neglected truths. Sometimes they comfort us, allowing us to connect with loved ones who have passed, offering a sense of closure or peace. Sometimes they simply remind us that life is stranger than we allow ourselves to admit. Whether or not we believe in prophecy, these dreams invite us to expand our sense of what is possible. They remind us that the human experience is not fully captured by charts and measurements. That mystery remains a vital part of living. And so we come, gently, to the closing of this reflection. Perhaps dreams that predict reality are not about telling us the future in the way fortune tellers claim. Perhaps they are about reminding us of the vastness of our own minds, the deep wells of perception and connection we carry but rarely notice. Or perhaps they are about humbling us, about teaching us that time and existence are far richer, stranger, and more beautiful than our waking logic allows. The next time you wake from a dream that feels too vivid, too precise, too heavy with meaning, I invite you not to dismiss it nor to obsess over it, but to hold it softly, like a fragile shell found on the shore. Write it down. Carry it with you. Let it whisper its meaning when the time is right. Whether it is prophecy or possibility, it is a thread in the tapestry of your life, a reminder that in sleep we are not cut off from reality, but perhaps more deeply connected to it. And as you drift into your own dreams tonight, may you carry with you the wonder that sometimes the future brushes against us in the quiet of sleep, and that whether or not we ever solve the riddle of prophetic dreams, the mystery itself is a gift, a gentle, enduring reminder that life will always hold more than we can know, and that is what makes it endlessly worth living. Strange loops in conversation, dialogue that seems to reset itself. There are moments in human interaction when conversation begins to feel less like a straight road and more like a circle, as though the words being spoken are caught in a quiet whirlpool, drawing both voices back again and again to the same point, the same phrase, the same rhythm of thought. You might have felt it with a friend or a loved one, when a discussion seems to reset itself, starting over in subtle ways, until you wonder if you are trapped inside an invisible loop. One person says something, the other responds, and then somehow the first point arises again as though nothing has been said, like a needle returning to the beginning of a record. It can happen in arguments where the same grievance is replayed, in everyday small talk where phrases repeat like scripts, even in moments of intimacy when the exchange feels so familiar it is almost déjà vu. At first, you may shrug it off as distraction or habit, but when the loop keeps returning, it feels uncanny, as if the dialogue has a life of its own, pulling the speakers along a path neither fully controls. Stay with me until the end, because hidden within these strange conversational loops lies a profound insight about how our minds, our relationships, and perhaps even reality itself, are shaped by repetition and return. From a distance, conversation seems simple, a sharing of words, ideas, feelings. But beneath its surface lies structure, rhythm, memory. We do not speak in a vacuum. We draw upon old phrases, remembered tones, habits of response. And because we are creatures of habit, our dialogues often become recursive, bending back toward familiar ground. Think of the couple who argues about the same issue again and again, never fully resolving it, their words looping like an unfinished symphony. Think of colleagues in a meeting repeating the same concerns week after week, as though the problem itself resists resolution. Think of a child asking the same question repeatedly, not because they forgot the answer, but because they are testing the stability of the world through the rhythm of return. In these loops, time seems to hesitate, as if the conversation is not moving forward but circling inward, deeper and deeper towards something unspoken. Cultures and philosophies have long noticed this looping nature of dialogue. In Zen traditions, koans, the paradoxical riddles given to students, often create conversational loops. A student asks for meaning. The master responds with something that defies logic, and the exchange repeats again and again until the student begins to glimpse the truth that lies beyond words. In the Socratic dialogues of ancient Greece, questions and answers circle endlessly, definitions being tested and dismantled, conversations spiraling until they collapse into silence or open into new understanding. Even in modern literature, writers like Lewis Carroll and Jorge Luis Borges played with the idea of dialogues that fold back upon themselves, conversations that become labyrinths where beginning and end blur. All of this points to a deep recognition. Conversation is not always a straight line. Sometimes it is a loop, and in that loop, truth hides. Psychology, too, reveals why conversations reset themselves. Our minds carry unprocessed emotions, unresolved conflicts, unmet needs. When we speak, those hidden layers surface, often disguised in repetition. A partner who repeats the same complaint may not truly be seeking a solution, but recognition. A colleague who circles back to the same point may be unconsciously voicing a fear that has not been named. Parents and children often loop in conversation, because beneath the surface argument about chores or curfews lies the deeper negotiation of autonomy and care. The loop persists until the underlying meaning is acknowledged. In this sense, conversational loops are not errors, but signals, messages trying to surface, truths trying to be heard. And here, at the heart of our reflection, is the most important insight. Strange loops in conversation are mirrors of the mind itself. The human mind is recursive. It thinks about thoughts, reflects upon reflections, returns again and again to its own starting points. Douglas Hofstadter, in his book Gödel, Escher, Bach, described strange loops as structures that circle back upon themselves, self-referential systems that create the illusion of depth by looping endlessly. Our consciousness itself may be such a loop, the brain reflecting upon itself until awareness emerges. When conversation becomes a strange loop, we are glimpsing the architecture of consciousness in real time. Dialogue turning back upon itself like a mirror reflecting a mirror, revealing both the limits and the beauty of language. Examples of these loops are everywhere once you notice them. In politics, debates often circle endlessly, the same points repeated across years, as though society itself cannot break free of its conversational groove. In religion, prayers and chants repeat the same words again and again, not to bore but to deepen, each repetition carrying the listener further inward. In relationships, pet phrases and private jokes loop endlessly, becoming the intimate rhythm of a bond. Even in therapy, progress is often made through loops, clients repeating stories until, one day, the words fall differently and insight blooms. Far from being meaningless, these loops are bridges, carrying us over and over until we are ready to step into new understanding. Think, too, of how language itself loops. Everyday greetings are loops. How are you? I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine. Small talk resets itself constantly. Weather, work, the same safe topics, looping endlessly, not because we lack imagination, but because these scripts create stability. They are the background hum of connection, the rhythm that allows deeper truths to occasionally break through. Even silence in conversation can be part of the loop, pauses that reset the dialogue and invite the cycle to begin again. What feels mechanical at first becomes, upon reflection, profoundly human. We loop because we long for rhythm, and in rhythm we find belonging. But there is a shadow side to conversational loops. They can trap us, keeping us bound to unresolved patterns. Arguments that replay for years can erode intimacy, making the loop a cage rather than a bridge. Political discourse trapped in endless repetition can prevent true change, words circling while actions stall. Personal self-talk often loops in destructive ways. I can't do this. I'm not enough. I'll fail again. These loops, like grooves worn into the mind, can hold us captive unless we learn to notice them and step outside. Recognition is the first key. When you hear the loop, you have the chance to pause, to listen for the truth beneath the repetition, to respond in a way that shifts the cycle. And so, conversation, like life itself, is both linear and circular. We tell stories that move forward, but within those stories, loops of meaning repeat, echoing until we finally hear them. Sometimes the loop is playful, like a child asking why again and again. Sometimes it is frustrating, like a debate that never resolves. Sometimes it is sacred, like a mantra circling in the mind. And sometimes it is transformative, the loop carrying us back to the same place until we see it with new eyes. The challenge is not to break the loop, but to listen within it, to notice what it is asking of us. As we draw toward the end of this reflection, consider the loops in your own conversations. The phrases you repeat, the arguments that return, the greetings that reset, the jokes that circle. What do they reveal about you, about your relationships, about the rhythms of your mind? Are they cages holding you in old patterns, or are they ladders leading you deeper into connection and understanding? The answer may depend not on the loop itself, but on your awareness of it. To speak is always to repeat in some way. Words themselves are recycled, borrowed, echoed from those who spoke before. To converse is to enter into rhythm, to allow the loop of dialogue to shape and be shaped by both voices. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation that feels like it is looping back on itself, pause and smile. Notice the rhythm, the return, the quiet echo. Ask yourself, what is this loop trying to show me? Perhaps it is revealing an unresolved truth. Perhaps it is deepening a bond. Perhaps it is simply reminding you that life itself is a dialogue, always circling, always returning, always beginning again. And in that moment, you may find peace in the loop, hearing not an error but a song, not a glitch but a rhythm, not a trap but a mirror reflecting the strange, beautiful recursion of being human. Uncanny Valley Encounters. Humans, or AI, behaving almost real, but not. There are moments in life when the familiar suddenly feels strange, when a smile seems almost, but not quite, human, when a voice carries the cadence of warmth yet leaves a subtle chill behind. You may have felt it in passing. A barista who moves with mechanical precision, a customer service voice that is perfectly polite but oddly devoid of spontaneity, or a digital assistant whose words mirror human conversation with uncanny fidelity. This sensation, often called the Uncanny Valley, is that strange, liminal space where the almost real becomes eerie, where the familiar is just offset enough to unsettle. It is in these encounters that we are reminded of how finely tuned our perception of humanity is, how deeply we respond not just to actions and appearances, but to the subtle rhythms, imperfections, and unpredictabilities that make someone genuinely alive. Hidden within these moments of subtle dissonance lies a profound reflection on the nature of connection, consciousness, and what it truly means to be human. From a distance, humans and machines may appear similar, both walking, speaking, moving through space, but it is in the details that we sense the difference. A slight hesitation, a micro-expression that does not align with the words being spoken, a rhythm and gesture that feels rehearsed rather than spontaneous. These are the cracks where our intuition recognizes otherness. Psychologists explain this effect as our brain's finely tuned prediction system colliding with subtle deviations from expectation. We are hardwired to notice when someone is almost human, because survival once depended upon recognizing intention, emotion, and authenticity. When those cues falter, even slightly, a sense of unease arises. And yet, in that unease, there is fascination. We lean closer, intrigued by the boundary between the real and the artificial, the organic and the programmed. Historically, humans have been captivated, and sometimes terrified, by simulacra of themselves. In ancient cultures, masks and statues were crafted to mimic life, and storytellers often warned of enchanted mirrors or puppets that moved on their own. In Japanese folklore, the concept of tsukamagami speaks of objects gaining consciousness after long use, objects that seem familiar but suddenly exhibit independent life. Literature and cinema have long explored this tension, from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, with its lifelike yet incomplete creation, to modern AI narratives in Ex Machina or Her, where the almost human presence evokes both empathy and fear. These stories illustrate a timeless fascination with beings that hover on the threshold of life, reflecting our desire to understand consciousness while simultaneously cautioning us about its imitation. Psychologically, encountering the uncanny valley forces reflection on our own expectations of behavior, speech, and emotion. We become acutely aware of the cues we rely on unconsciously: microexpressions, pauses, inflections, imperfection, the tiny errors and hesitations that confirm authenticity. A human who behaves with mechanical precision, no matter how perfect their gestures, may provoke discomfort because they fail to meet the nuanced criteria our minds associate with life. A chatbot or humanoid robot that responds flawlessly, but without the subtle randomness of human interaction, similarly unsettles us. Our reaction is not merely about fear of technology, but about a deep-seated recognition that life is not formulaic, that humanity is inherently messy, unpredictable, and irreducibly unique. Here lies the heart of the insight. Uncanny Valley Encounters remind us that what makes us human is not perfection but imperfection. It is the hesitations, the contradictions, the quirks, and the moments of vulnerability that signal consciousness and life. AI can mimic speech patterns, replicate gestures, and even generate empathy in words, but the human essence remains deeply tied to unpredictability and subtle imperfection. In observing almost human behaviors, we are prompted to reflect on ourselves, on the ways we perform our own humanity, the ways we are scripted in social expectation, and the ways we recognize authenticity in others. In these moments, the uncanny valley is not merely eerie. It is revelatory, highlighting the invisible threads that connect perception, expectation, and life itself. These encounters are not limited to technology. They appear in daily life, in social interactions where a person's behavior feels rehearsed, overly polite, or oddly detached, almost as if they are acting from a script rather than being fully present. In classrooms, offices, or public spaces, we sometimes encounter those who move through the world with such mechanical consistency that the spontaneity that marks true engagement seems absent. Actors, performers, and public figures can evoke similar reactions when their gestures are meticulously controlled. In romantic relationships, the uncanny may emerge when someone's expressions of affection are precise and predictable, missing the subtle irregularities that convey genuine emotion. Across all these scenarios, the sense of dissonance arises because our perception is attuned to authenticity. When life's unpredictable rhythm is absent, unease follows. Culturally, the uncanny valley has become an arena for artistic exploration. Digital avatars, hyper-realistic animations, and lifelike robots all test the boundaries of perception. In virtual reality, we navigate spaces populated by entities that look human but fail to respond organically, creating a cognitive dissonance that is both thrilling and unsettling. Theater and performance art often deliberately exploit these effects, using subtle exaggeration or precise mimicry to provoke reflection on the nature of presence and reality. In doing so, art and technology intersect, prompting us to consider not only what is real, but how we define reality, how we perceive life, and how the almost real forces us to confront the essence of human experience. History provides further examples of the fascination and unease generated by near-human entities. Automata in 18th and 19th century Europe, mechanical figures that could write, play music, or simulate human gestures, were marvels of engineering and simultaneously eerie reminders of our own mechanical nature. Philosophers and engineers alike pondered the implications of such creations. Could life be replicated, or was there an ineffable quality that eluded even the most perfect imitation? In modern times, artificial intelligence and robotics extend this conversation, creating entities that blur the boundary between human and machine. Each advancement brings us closer to simulating life, while the uncanny valley reminds us that the human mind is exquisitely sensitive to nuance and authenticity, perceiving even the smallest deviations from the expected. In relationships, these dynamics are especially poignant. Consider a friend or partner whose behavior seems scripted, whose responses feel rehearsed or detached. The effect is similar to encountering an AI, an unsettling awareness that beneath the surface, something essential is missing. This realization prompts introspection. We examine our own authenticity, the ways in which we present ourselves, and how deeply we rely on subtle imperfections to signal presence and engagement. The uncanny valley is, in this sense, a mirror, reflecting both our perception of others and our understanding of ourselves, highlighting the intricate dance between expectation and reality. Uncanny encounters also illuminate our evolving relationship with technology. Virtual assistants, social robots, and AI-driven companions are increasingly woven into daily life, their voices and gestures almost human, yet subtly off. This strangeness is not merely a curiosity, but an opportunity for reflection. How do we distinguish between authentic and simulated presence? What do we value in genuine connection? And perhaps most importantly, what does the persistent discomfort of the uncanny valley teach us about the essential qualities that constitute life and consciousness? In confronting these questions, we gain insight not only into the nature of artificial entities, but also into our own humanity, the qualities we unconsciously seek in others, and the intricate patterns of empathy and recognition that define social existence. Even mundane experiences can evoke the uncanny. A mannequin in a store window, posed with near-human realism, can provoke subtle unease. A lifelike voice on the phone may feel strangely intimate yet hollow. We instinctively notice discrepancies between expected human behavior and its imitation, and our minds react with a mixture of fascination and wariness. These micro-moments accumulate, shaping our perception of both people and technology, teaching us how finely tuned our senses are to detect authenticity. Each uncanny encounter, however brief, offers a lens through which to examine the fragile boundary between reality and imitation, presence and absence, life and simulation. In the broader cultural imagination, the Uncanny Valley speaks to timeless human questions. What defines life? What is consciousness? Can it be replicated or simulated? From myths of golems and enchanted dolls to modern AI narratives, humans have long explored the space between creation and creator, imitation and authenticity. In every story, we confront the tension between what appears alive and what truly is, and in that tension, the uncanny arises. It is a reminder that life is not reducible to form or function alone. It is the subtle interplay of unpredictability, emotion, imperfection, and presence that confers vitality and meaning. As we move toward reflection, consider your own encounters with the uncanny. Perhaps it was a robot that mimicked speech too perfectly, an overly rehearsed colleague, or even your own moments of mechanical repetition. Each encounter offers an opportunity to notice the subtleties of presence, the qualities that distinguish life from imitation. By observing the almost human, we gain insight into the essence of humanity, our capacity for spontaneity, empathy, vulnerability, and imperfection. The uncanny valley, unsettling as it may be, becomes a guide, illuminating the delicate qualities that render human experience rich and irreplaceable. Ultimately, these experiences invite calm reflection. They remind us to appreciate the unpredictable rhythms of real life, the small gestures, the imperfections, and the fleeting micro-moments that make human connection profound. They encourage mindfulness of presence, both in ourselves and in those around us, and they invite us to recognize the qualities that cannot be replicated by machines. The almost human becomes a teacher, revealing the contours of what we value, what we recognize as alive, and what it means to truly connect. In walking through life, encountering the almost real, the nearly human, we are continually reminded of our own humanity. Each uncanny encounter, whether with AI, robotics, or people acting with rigid precision, is a subtle invitation to notice, to feel, and to appreciate the qualities that make us irreplaceably alive. In these moments, the ordinary transforms into a meditation, the familiar becomes strange, and the almost real becomes a mirror reflecting the extraordinary complexity of being human. And in that reflection, we find a quiet, enduring awe, an awareness of the fragile, beautiful line that separates imitation from life, and the deep, irreducible magic of authentic presence. Electronic malfunctions without cause, devices glitching at key moments. There are moments in life when the ordinary hum of technology, the steady rhythm of devices we trust and rely upon, suddenly falters, and in that faltering, a subtle sense of wonder and unease arises. Perhaps your phone freezes for no apparent reason just as you are about to send an important message, or a screen flickers with images that vanish before you can fully grasp them, or a computer crashes mid-thought, leaving you suspended between action and expectation. Perhaps your smart speaker mishears a command, playing a song that makes no sense, or a navigation app recalculates with uncanny timing, directing you into unfamiliar streets that seem almost designed to confuse. These are the instances of electronic malfunctions without cause, glitches that occur at the very moments when precision, clarity, and reliability are most demanded. At first, we may shrug them off, blaming chance or human error, but as the events accumulate, patterns begin to emerge, subtle and uncanny, that tug at something deeper than mere frustration. Within these unexplainable malfunctions lies a reflection not just on the nature of our devices, but on the human experience itself, on our relationship with unpredictability, and on the fragile ways in which order and chaos intertwine in our lives. From a distance, technology appears as a seamless extension of human intention, a machine that obeys the will, a device that mirrors our needs with precision and speed. Yet these interruptions, these inexplicable glitches, remind us that no system is infallible, no algorithm perfectly aligned with expectation. A printer jams for no discernible reason. A video lags at a critical moment. A car dashboard flickers with symbols that make no logical sense. These are the small reminders of contingency, the hints that despite our mastery over the material, there is always an element beyond our control. Psychologists and engineers alike note that humans experience heightened awareness during such moments. When the expected flow is disrupted, attention sharpens, perception stretches, and we are forced to confront the delicate balance between our reliance on order and the ever-present possibility of disorder. There is a strange beauty in these pauses, a fleeting space where we are neither fully frustrated nor fully in control, but suspended in observation, noticing details of both the device and ourselves that often go overlooked. Historically, humans have long been captivated by inexplicable malfunctions, even before the advent of modern electronics. Ancient storytellers recounted enchanted instruments that played notes on their own, clocks that ran counter to time, and mirrors that displayed images out of sync with reality. These tales, often dismissed as superstition, reflect a fundamental human fascination with unpredictability, a recognition that even carefully constructed systems can falter without apparent reason. Literature, too, celebrates the eeriness of the unexplained. Writers like Franz Kafka and Jorge Luis Borges explored worlds where reality itself glitched, objects and systems defying expectation, leaving characters suspended in spaces both familiar and alien. In all these narratives, the human mind is confronted with the tension between expectation and failure, between control and the unexplainable. These stories echo in our daily experience. The printer that refuses to print a document moments before submission, the software that crashes during a key presentation, the camera that freezes during a critical capture. Each glitch is a reminder that life and technology alike are not wholly predictable. Psychologically, uncaused electronic malfunctions provoke reflection on our dependence on technology and, by extension, on the structures we construct to navigate life. When a device fails without warning, it exposes our vulnerability, reminding us that even in a world dominated by precision, unpredictability persists. These glitches resonate with a deeper human experience, the moments when plans unravel, when memory falters, when our bodies or minds betray us unexpectedly. Just as a frozen screen forces us to pause, so too do life's interruptions prompt awareness of contingency, patience, and adaptability. We are reminded that control is never absolute, and that uncertainty, while unsettling, is an inherent aspect of being alive. In these unanticipated pauses, there is a subtle invitation to reflect on the invisible forces and intricate systems, both technological and natural, that surround and shape us. At the heart of this reflection lies a profound insight. Electronic malfunctions without cause are mirrors of our relationship with imperfection and unpredictability. They reveal the fine line between order and chaos, structure and randomness, intention and accident. Just as our devices falter at crucial moments, so too do our thoughts, emotions, and plans sometimes glitch, producing gaps, hesitations, or misfires that defy explanation. In both cases, the response matters more than the error itself. The fleeting moments of interruption invite curiosity, awareness, and presence. They are opportunities to step outside automatic expectation, to notice subtleties, to confront our assumptions, and to embrace the unknown with a quiet attentiveness that deepens understanding. These glitches teach patience, humility, and the art of living attentively, reminding us that life's rhythm is not always synchronized, that each interruption carries lessons beyond its immediate frustration. These malfunctions are not confined to electronics alone. They appear in daily life whenever the expected rhythm is disrupted, a train delayed without explanation, a sudden miscommunication, a missed connection that changes the course of an event. In relationships, similar glitches occur when conversations falter, when plans unravel, or when a loved one acts in ways we cannot predict. Each instance, whether mechanical or human, emphasizes the fragility of continuity, the delicate dance between expectation and reality. And yet, within these interruptions, beauty emerges, a chance to pause, to reflect, and to perceive dimensions of reality that might otherwise remain unnoticed. The uncaused glitch becomes a subtle teacher, revealing the hidden patterns, possibilities, and contingencies that define existence. These experiences awaken a quiet mindfulness, a heightened awareness of the intricate interconnections that govern both technology and life. Culturally, the fascination with unexplainable malfunctions extends to art, philosophy, and technology. Digital artists exploit glitches to create works that evoke both disorder and surprise, transforming failures into expressions of creativity. In virtual environments, unexpected disruptions, pixels misaligned, audio desynchronized, physics temporarily suspended, invite players to perceive systems differently, to recognize the rules and limitations that govern experience. Philosophers, too, consider these moments as disruptions of the ordinary, windows into the contingencies that shape perception, knowledge, and action. Across cultures and disciplines, uncaused malfunctions are recognized as more than mere errors. They are phenomena that provoke awareness, reflection, and wonder, turning frustration into insight and inconvenience into a meditative pause. History provides vivid examples of fascination with unexplainable technological failures. Early automata often misbehaved at crucial moments, shocking audiences who had assumed perfection. Telegraph lines flickered mysteriously in the 19th century, radio signals crossed unpredictably, and early computers crashed without discernible cause. Each instance sparked curiosity and, in some cases, fear, revealing the human impulse to find meaning in anomalies. Today, as we encounter similar glitches in smartphones, laptops, and advanced machinery, we participate in a long tradition of observing, interpreting, and reflecting upon moments when technology departs from expectation. The eeriness remains, but so does the invitation to contemplation, as these minor disruptions reveal the delicate interplay between human intention and mechanical reality. Even mundane experiences reveal the uncanny in malfunction. A navigation system recalculates incorrectly at a critical turn, a projector falters during a presentation, or an elevator stalls momentarily with no clear reason. Each interruption carries a subtle lesson. Systems, like life, are vulnerable to the unforeseen. The human mind, finely attuned to pattern and regularity, registers these anomalies with both fascination and alertness. We notice the failure, wonder at its cause, and often attempt to ascribe meaning where none is apparent. In doing so, we confront our own desire for control and narrative coherence, and we glimpse the profound interplay between order and chaos that permeates existence. These small, fleeting glitches become mirrors reflecting our own expectations, our sense of timing, and our relationship with unpredictability. At the center of this exploration is the realization that uncaused malfunctions are not merely technical failures. They are reflective moments, opportunities to consider the limits of prediction, the nature of contingency, and the delicate interconnection of systems, both mechanical and human. They invite patience, observation, and humility. In life, as in technology, perfection is an illusion. Errors, interruptions, and glitches are inevitable. And when they occur, particularly at key moments, they carry the potential to shift perception, deepen awareness, and inspire reflection on the unpredictable currents that shape reality. These interruptions illuminate the impermanent, transient nature of both our tools and our own plans, reminding us to approach each moment with awareness, curiosity, and grace. The phenomenon resonates in relationships, work, and everyday routine. A conversation that stalls unexpectedly, a plan that unravels without reason, or a sequence of events that diverges from expectation mirrors the patterns we see in devices. Each interruption, though momentarily unsettling, invites adaptation, patience, and attentiveness. Like a frozen screen or a crashed program, these pauses create space for observation, insight, and realignment. They remind us that life's flow is never entirely smooth, that the unexpected is a constant companion, and that resilience, curiosity, and awareness are as essential as skill and planning. By attending to these small disturbances, we cultivate a subtle awareness of time, causality, and the interconnectedness of events that otherwise pass unnoticed. Ultimately, Uncaused electronic malfunctions encourage a reflective engagement with both technology and life. They remind us to notice the small irregularities, the pauses, the disruptions that break routine and reveal hidden depths. They call us to embrace uncertainty, to approach the world with attentiveness, and to perceive the subtle interplay between order and chance. These glitches are invitations, not annoyances, moments that draw attention to the fragile precision upon which we rely and the deeper patterns that underpin experience. By attending to them, we gain insight into perception, expectation, and the delicate balance that defines both human and technological systems. As we consider the quiet mystery of electronic malfunctions without cause, we are invited to slow down, to reflect, and to attune ourselves to the nuances of presence, awareness, and imperfection. We learn to find calm in unpredictability, to appreciate the subtleties of function and failure, and to recognize the deeper patterns woven through both machines and human life. Each glitch, each inexplicable pause or flicker, is a subtle reminder that nothing is entirely under control, that reality itself is woven with contingencies, and that life's beauty often emerges in the unexpected interruptions. In observing these moments, we find a meditation on patience, perception, and the quiet wonder that arises when the world defies expectation, leaving us thoughtful, alert, and profoundly aware of the intricate, fragile dance between order and chance that shapes every experience. Through these seemingly small, unexplainable malfunctions, we are offered a lens into the fragile perfection of the systems we depend upon and a mirror reflecting the intricate, unpredictable patterns of life itself, inviting both humility and awe. Bizarre real-life copy-paste errors, identical strangers, or duplicated events. There are moments in life when the ordinary rhythm of reality seems to stutter, when the familiar bends in ways that feel impossible, and when an almost imperceptible sense of repetition quietly unsettles the mind. Perhaps you are walking down a bustling street, and, for a brief instant, you see a stranger who mirrors the posture, expression, and attire of someone you know elsewhere, someone who could not possibly be in the same place at the same time. Or maybe an event unfolds around you, seemingly ordinary, yet each detail, the gestures, the timing, the sounds, echoes a moment you have experienced before, as if life itself has copied and pasted a fragment of reality for your observation. These are the bizarre real-life copy-paste errors, uncanny repetitions of people, events, and circumstances that defy casual explanation. At first glance, they may seem trivial, amusing, or even disorienting, yet if you linger in these moments, a deeper reflection emerges. Stay with me until the end, for in these repetitions lies not only the strange geometry of coincidence, but also an invitation to explore the hidden architecture of perception, memory, and the subtle patterns that weave our lived experiences into an intricate, often astonishing tapestry. From a distance, life presents itself as linear and unique, a procession of events in which each person, each encounter, and each decision appears singular, unrepeatable, and irreducibly distinct. Yet when we encounter an identical stranger or a duplicated event, this sense of singularity wavers. A glance down a crowded street may reveal someone who is the precise mirror of a friend or acquaintance, someone who inhabits the same gestures, the same cadence, the same silent rhythm of movement, as though existence itself has played a trick on you. Perhaps you notice the same bird perched in the same place at the same hour on consecutive days, or a conversation that unfolds word for word with uncanny similarity to one you witnessed earlier. These experiences, however small, create a subtle tension in the mind, a gentle dissonance that pulls awareness toward the boundaries between chance, probability, and perception. Our brains, exquisitely attuned to pattern recognition, detect these repetitions with startling clarity, forcing us to pause, notice, and consider the extraordinary within the ordinary. Historically, humans have long been fascinated by doubles and repeated phenomena. Folklore is filled with doppelgangers, mysterious counterparts who appear as omens or harbingers, reflections of the self or signals from beyond. These tales, spanning cultures and continents, often carry a mixture of awe, fear, and reverence, revealing a deep-rooted human curiosity about the possibility that life might mirror itself in strange and unexpected ways. Literature, too, revels in these echoes of reality. Borges, for example, constructed labyrinths of mirrored events, parallel worlds, and repeating characters, while Shakespeare explored mistaken identities, twins, and mirrored behaviors that compel both characters and audiences to question the certainty of perception. Even in the simplest narratives of daily life, these duplications remind us that existence is not always linear and that patterns, sometimes precise and other times subtle, emerge with a complexity that challenges ordinary comprehension. Psychologically, the experience of encountering identical strangers or duplicated events forces reflection on the mechanisms of perception, memory, and probability. Our minds are wired to identify patterns, to map similarities and discrepancies in the world around us, and to interpret those findings in the context of experience. In doing so, the brain sometimes overlays expectation onto reality, creating moments in which coincidence and recognition become nearly indistinguishable. Memory itself, reconstructed and reshaped with each recollection, contributes to this sense of repetition, as it recalls fragments of past experiences that seem to manifest anew in the present. Yet even within rational analysis, some repetitions are so precise, so startlingly exact, that they resist any tidy explanation. A stranger who looks and moves exactly like someone you know, a mundane event that unfolds in the same minutiae as one from yesterday, or a sequence of interactions that mirrors a distant memory. All these invite wonder, curiosity, and an almost meditative reflection on the uncanny rhythms that underlie human experience. At the heart of these copy-paste phenomena lies a profound insight. They illuminate the delicate line between chance and structure, between randomness and pattern. What appears as repetition is also an opportunity to observe the subtle frameworks that govern both perception and experience. The mind responds not only to the external echo but also to the internal recognition, the surprise, and the effort to reconcile the familiar with the seemingly impossible. The identical stranger or repeated event compels reflection, asking us to notice the invisible threads that connect moments and experiences, to consider how our awareness perceives the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. In this way, these repetitions are not merely curiosities. They are invitations to mindful observation, to a deeper engagement with the rhythms, patterns, and probabilities that shape reality. These phenomena extend beyond strangers on the street into every corner of daily life. A train passes at the same minute each morning with identical passengers. A neighbor walks their dog along the same route at the same time, repeating gestures and steps. Even a billboard, a shop window, or a sequence of shadows and light may recreate patterns almost perfectly. These duplications, whether subtle or striking, reveal the unconscious architecture of everyday life, the hidden loops, rhythms, and micropatterns that escape our casual notice. When we pay attention to these repetitions, we begin to perceive the invisible scaffolding that underlies experience, uncovering a world of subtle symmetries and recurring forms. Each echo becomes a gentle nudge toward awareness, a reminder that reality, though appearing continuous, contains resonances that ripple through time and space in unexpected ways. Culturally, these mirrored phenomena have long inspired reflection, creation, and interpretation. Artists exploit accidental symmetries in photography and film, capturing moments that suggest deliberate repetition even in chaos. Writers explore parallel lives, alternate histories, and repeated destinies, weaving narratives that invite contemplation on identity, fate, and coincidence. Even in contemporary social media, stories of look-alike strangers or repeated events captivate audiences with their uncanny precision, sparking fascination, speculation, and discussion. Across cultures and generations, the human impulse to notice, record, and reflect upon these duplications underscores our profound interest in the interplay between repetition, identity, and the perception of reality itself. Historical accounts of real-life copy-paste anomalies abound. In 19th century Europe, travelers reported encountering strangers who were inexplicably identical to people they knew elsewhere, provoking wonder, speculation, and sometimes fear. In modern times, tales circulate of twins or unrelated individuals who meet by chance in distant cities, exhibiting near-perfect resemblance in appearance, attire, and movement. Remarkable coincidences of events unfolding with extraordinary similarity across time and geography further capture the imagination. These stories, whether anecdotal or documented, challenge conventional notions of probability and highlight the profound interplay between pattern, perception, and experience. They remind us that reality, though governed by principles and laws, occasionally orchestrates moments of repetition that defy expectation and invite contemplative observation. Even the most mundane aspects of daily life reveal echoes and duplications. A cafe patron orders the same unusual combination at the same hour every day. A pedestrian moves through a crosswalk with the same gait, timing, and posture. An elevator or escalator pauses in the same way as it did yesterday. These subtle repetitions draw attention to hidden regularities in behavior and environment, revealing the underlying rhythms that structure experience. By noticing these echoes, we are prompted to reflect not only on the mechanics of the world, but on the nature of perception itself, how we interpret, predict, and connect events, and how the interplay between expectation and observation shapes the way we experience life. At the core of understanding these copy-paste anomalies is the recognition that repetition, whether in strangers, events, or circumstances, is a lens through which to explore the intricate architecture of reality. These moments illuminate the invisible patterns of daily life and the cognitive processes that allow us to perceive them. They invite reflection on contingency, probability, and the delicate interplay between predictability and surprise. The uncanny experience of mirrored people or repeated events is an opportunity to observe the extraordinary within the ordinary, to cultivate mindfulness, and to appreciate the subtle structures underlying lived experience. These anomalies do not merely surprise, they instruct, guiding attention toward the rhythms, symmetries, and unexpected harmonies embedded in the fabric of reality. In relationships, social interactions, and communication, these mirrored events reveal subtle resonances. A repeated conversation, a mirrored gesture, or a familiar pattern in someone's behavior may appear uncanny but also fosters connection and reflection. Awareness of these repetitions deepens understanding, empathy, and attentiveness, encouraging a patient and observant approach to interaction. Even brief encounters with duplicated forms, strangers whose faces echo others, events that unfold with eerie similarity, prompt contemplation on identity, connection, and the intertwined nature of individual and collective experience. Life's repetitions, then, are not simply mechanical. They are invitations to presence, insight, and reflective engagement. Ultimately, bizarre real-life copy-paste errors remind us that reality is layered, interconnected, and far more intricate than it initially appears. They compel awareness of subtle patterns and repetitions, of the delicate balance between coincidence and causality, and of the ways in which perception shapes experience. Observing these anomalies invites us to slow down, to notice the overlooked, and to engage with the extraordinary subtlety of the everyday world. The uncanny duplication of faces, gestures, or events becomes not merely a curiosity, but a meditation on awareness, perception, and the hidden symmetries of life. Each instance, whether fleeting or striking, is a reminder that the ordinary contains the extraordinary and that the world occasionally orchestrates echoes that compel reflection, wonder, and mindfulness. As we traverse the world, encountering strange repetitions and mirrored moments, we are offered a lens through which to appreciate the intricate poetry of existence. Identical strangers, repeated events, and uncanny echoes are not simply anomalies. They are invitations to mindfulness, observation, and reflection. They reveal the extraordinary embedded within the ordinary, the hidden patterns that shape experience, and the delicate dance between chance, probability, and perception. By attending to these subtle duplications, we cultivate awareness, curiosity, and a quiet reverence for the rhythms of reality, recognizing that life's beauty often lies in its echoes, repetitions, and the strange, poetic resonances that quietly unfold around us. In these mirrored moments, we discover a reflection not only of the external world, but of our own consciousness, perception, and engagement with the astonishing complexity of existence, leaving us thoughtful, calm, and attuned to the quiet poetry of life. The simulation hypothesis, philosophical and scientific debates. There are moments, often in the quiet stretches of thought, when the world around us feels both vivid and strangely constructed, when the textures of life, the softness of a morning breeze, the warmth of sunlight falling across a table, the faint hum of distant voices, seem both real and somehow deliberate, as if existence itself is a meticulously rendered tableau. Perhaps you have noticed the uncanny order in human behavior, the rhythmic unfolding of events, or the intricate mathematical precision of natural laws, and wondered whether all of this is the product of randomness, or if there is some deeper intelligence, some hidden framework, quietly orchestrating the tapestry of reality. The simulation hypothesis invites such contemplation, suggesting that the universe we inhabit, our experiences, thoughts, and dreams, might exist within a grand computational construct, a vast program of which we are both participants and observers. Stay with me until the end, for within this exploration lies not only a journey into philosophical and scientific debate, but also a meditation on consciousness, perception, and the very essence of what it means to be aware in a universe that may be far more layered than we dare to imagine. From the vantage of daily life, the world appears linear and continuous, a steady procession of moments flowing from past to future. Yet when we pause to examine the subtle patterns embedded within reality, the recurrent synchronicities, the precise alignments of events, the elegant laws governing everything from planetary motion to quantum phenomena, we begin to perceive a framework that seems both intricate and intentional. Philosophers across the ages have long pondered the question of whether reality is fully trustworthy or if our senses can deceive us. Plato's allegory of the cave, Descartes' meditations on the deceiving demon, and even the contemplations of Eastern philosophies on Maya and illusion all probe the possibility that the world we perceive might be a shadow of something deeper. The simulation hypothesis updates these ancient inquiries for the digital age, asking whether consciousness itself could exist within a constructed environment, a system governed by rules and computations beyond our immediate perception. Scientific inquiry lends both intrigue and plausibility to these reflections. Modern physics reveals a universe governed by mathematical elegance, from the predictable orbits of planets to the probabilistic quirks of subatomic particles. Quantum mechanics, with its dependence on observation and its paradoxes, challenges our assumptions about causality and determinism, suggesting that reality is not wholly fixed, but perhaps responsive to consciousness itself. Some theorists posit that observable anomalies, glitches, coincidences, or limits in computational precision could be signs of a stimulated environment, a universe whose fidelity is finite, whose resolution is quantized, and whose boundaries, though imperceptible, subtly shape experience. Even the everyday repetition of patterns, the eerie alignment of events, or the uncanny predictability of human behavior can be reframed through this lens, offering hints, whether literal or metaphorical, that reality is structured with a precision both wondrous and humbling. At the core of the simulation hypothesis lies a profound philosophical insight. The act of questioning reality reveals as much about consciousness as it does about the external world. The hypothesis is not merely a technical speculation, but a reflective mirror, illuminating the processes by which we perceive, interpret, and engage with our environment. Each uncanny pattern, each perfectly aligned coincidence, encourages introspection. When we encounter moments of synchronicity, when events unfold with a precision that seems beyond mere chance, we are prompted to reflect not only on the architecture of reality, but on the architecture of awareness itself, how our minds detect patterns, construct narratives, and navigate uncertainty. In this way, the hypothesis becomes a meditation on perception, memory, and cognition, inviting us to consider that the universe we inhabit may be both observed and created through the interaction of consciousness and the underlying system that sustains it. Historically, Humans have approached similar questions through myth, religion, and philosophy. Mystical traditions speak of illusory worlds, of veils that hide the ultimate truth, suggesting that sensory experience is filtered, partial, and interpretive. Cartesian thought experiments challenge the reliability of the senses, proposing scenarios in which all perceived reality is an elaborate deception. The simulation hypothesis, while couched in the language of computation and modern physics, continues this lineage of inquiry, merging ancient reflection with contemporary scientific reasoning. It asks us to consider not only the structure of reality, but the mechanisms by which consciousness inhabits, interprets, and perhaps even shapes that reality. Through this lens, even the smallest details of daily life, the repetition of gestures, the alignment of events, the patterns of social interaction, take on a subtle resonance, inviting observation and reflection. Cultural narratives amplify and explore these questions, offering ways to imaginatively inhabit the hypothesis. Films, literature, and digital media often depict worlds where perception is manipulated, consciousness is tested, and the boundary between real and artificial becomes fluid. Stories such as The Matrix captivate because they dramatize the possibility that the world we experience is a carefully constructed environment, that reality itself can be both authentic and illusory. In daily life, subtler analogs abound. The experience of déjà vu, the uncanny repetition of events, or the perception that life is following a preordained pattern all evoke a sense of simulated order. These experiences, whether fleeting or persistent, draw attention to the structures, rhythms, and interconnections that underlie consciousness and the universe, encouraging us to look more closely at the hidden frameworks shaping existence. Scientific and philosophical debates about the simulation hypothesis remain both rigorous and speculative. Some thinkers argue that if advanced civilizations are capable of simulating consciousness, and if the number of such simulations far exceeds the number of base realities, then statistically, it is more likely that we inhabit a simulation. Others contend that technological, energetic, or computational constraints render large-scale simulation infeasible, or that consciousness itself may resist perfect replication in any system. These debates do more than entertain. They provoke reflection on the nature of evidence, probability, and understanding. They ask us to consider the limits of knowledge and to approach reality with both curiosity and humility, recognizing that even if a simulation is unlikely, contemplating the possibility reveals the extraordinary subtlety of existence and the intricate complexity of conscious experience. At the heart of the inquiry is a realization. Whether or not we inhabit a literal simulation, life is a system of layered patterns, interconnected phenomena, and emergent behaviors that can be observed, analyzed, and interpreted. Daily life offers microcosms of simulated experience. Routines, synchronizations, predictable sequences, and human behavior patterns echo the logic of coded systems, revealing order and complexity in the everyday. By observing these patterns, we gain insight not only into the external world, but into our own minds, the ways in which we anticipate, perceive, and respond to the unfolding of events. The simulation hypothesis thus becomes a meditation on the interface between consciousness and structure, between perception and reality, highlighting the profound interconnectedness of all experience. Relationships and social interactions offer additional layers of reflection. Communication often unfolds in patterned ways. Conversations loop, behaviors are mirrored, social conventions repeat, and emergent norms arise from collective behavior. These phenomena parallel the underlying principles of simulated systems, inviting reflection on the interplay between individual choice and systemic pattern, between spontaneity and structure. Recognizing these patterns cultivates mindfulness, attention, and empathy, encouraging a deeper engagement with the rhythms of daily life. The hypothesis, while speculative, provides a lens through which to examine the ways in which awareness interacts with environment, revealing subtleties that might otherwise remain unnoticed. Ultimately, the simulation hypothesis is less a proposition to be proven than a framework for reflection, a lens through which to explore reality, consciousness, and existence itself. It challenges assumptions about what is fundamental and what is constructed, encouraging a contemplative approach to life in which observation, curiosity, and humility are paramount. By considering the possibility that reality is structured, orchestrated, or even computational, we sharpen awareness of the subtle harmonies and anomalies in everyday experience. Every repeated gesture, every uncanny alignment, and every moment of synchronicity becomes an opportunity to reflect on perception, cognition, and the extraordinary complexity of the universe. As we move through our days, encountering patterns, coincidences, and moments that feel improbably orchestrated, the simulation hypothesis invites us to pause and reflect, to observe the interplay between perception, reality, and consciousness. It reminds us that life, whether simulated or not, is layered, intricate, and suffused with meaning. The theory does not diminish the wonder of existence. Rather, it amplifies it, encouraging mindfulness and attunement to subtle patterns and resonances. In contemplating the possibility that our universe is a carefully structured construct, we cultivate a deeper appreciation for the beauty, fragility, and mystery of life, attuning ourselves to the extraordinary poetry embedded in each moment. Each experience becomes a reflection of both the external world and the internal mind, leaving us thoughtful, calm, and profoundly aware of the remarkable tapestry in which we are immersed. Unexplainable disappearances, people vanishing with no logical trace. There are moments, often in the quiet, liminal spaces of our lives, when reality feels fragile, as if the world itself is holding its breath, and we notice, with a sudden jolt, the absence of someone we once counted as present. Perhaps it is a friend who fails to show up at the usual time, a neighbor who seems to have dissolved into the hum of the city, or a loved one whose voice, once familiar, becomes impossible to trace. These unexplainable disappearances, where individuals vanish with no logical trace, provoke a deep, almost primordial unease, touching something at the very edges of consciousness. Stay with me until the end, for in exploring these vanishings, we are not merely chasing sensational stories or cold facts. We are reflecting on the nature of existence itself, the delicate threads that weave together presence and absence, and the quiet, often overlooked spaces in which the human mind confronts the unknown, the uncanny, and the mysterious. In our ordinary perception, life flows with predictable continuity. The people we encounter, the places we inhabit, the routines we follow, all of these create a sense of stability and order. Yet when someone disappears without explanation, this continuity shatters, leaving a gap in both space and understanding. The world suddenly feels porous, its logic fragile, its rhythms interrupted. Philosophers and mystics have long contemplated such moments, from Plato's cave, where shadows and perception collide, to Buddhist meditations on impermanence, where every form is fleeting and attachment becomes a source of suffering. The sudden absence of a person, especially without rational cause, exposes the thin membrane between what we know and what we can never fully grasp, reminding us that life is contingent and our sense of control is often an illusion. Throughout history, cultures have attempted to grapple with disappearances in ways that blend the mystical, the psychological, and the social. Ancient myths abound with stories of mortals spirited away by gods, travelers lost in forests that bend time, and communities haunted by the sudden absence of key figures. In medieval Europe, legends of vanishing villagers and enigmatic travelers gave rise to elaborate tales of spirits, enchantments, and hidden realms, while indigenous traditions often interpret disappearances as passages into alternate spiritual dimensions. Modern society, with its reliance on science, law, and statistics, continues to encounter unexplainable vanishings. People who walk out of their homes and never return, sailors and aviators lost without a trace, hikers disappearing into mountains whose maps cannot fully capture the terrain. Each instance, historical or contemporary, evokes the same fundamental tension, the human mind seeking cause and order in the face of inexplicable absence. The psychology of disappearance is a profound landscape of its own. Human cognition is built to detect patterns, establish causality, and construct narratives that render experience coherent. When someone disappears without trace, These mechanisms strain against the unknown. Families and communities are plunged into uncertainty, oscillating between hope and despair, constructing scenarios to make sense of events that defy comprehension. Memory itself becomes both anchor and tormentor. Recalling the vanished person's presence keeps them alive in thought, yet emphasizes their absence in reality. The phenomenon forces confrontation with impermanence in its starkest form. Absence becomes a presence in its own right, occupying spaces in consciousness, reshaping emotional landscapes, and challenging the assumed permanence of the world around us. Philosophically, unexplainable disappearances demand contemplation of the boundaries of reality, perception, and knowledge. What does it mean for someone to vanish without a trace? Are these gaps anomalies in an otherwise rational system, or do they hint at deeper, hidden structures within the universe? Mechanisms beyond human comprehension, perhaps linked to dimensions, consciousness, or forces we cannot yet perceive. In exploring these vanishings, we are encouraged to accept that some aspects of existence may elude logical analysis, to cultivate humility, and to recognize that understanding itself is a layered, often incomplete process. The absence challenges assumptions, creating spaces for inquiry, reflection, and philosophical engagement with questions that might otherwise be ignored in daily routines. Cultural interpretations of vanishings reflect a spectrum of human responses. In literature and film, the theme recurs with remarkable consistency. Characters disappear mysteriously, entire towns are abandoned, and identities are erased, evoking unease and fascination. These narratives serve both as metaphor and as mirror to reality, exploring themes of loss, impermanence, and the unseen forces shaping life. In folklore, disappeared individuals are often thought to have crossed into other worlds, to have been claimed by spirits, or to exist in liminal spaces invisible to ordinary perception. Even in urban and contemporary contexts, where scientific reasoning dominates, disappearances provoke a mix of rational investigation and imaginative speculation, revealing that human consciousness naturally grapples with mysteries that cannot be fully resolved. Examining real-world examples underscores the complexity and subtlety of unexplainable disappearances. Consider travelers who vanish from remote wildernesses, leaving behind no footprints or signs of struggle. Sailors lost at sea, whose vessels are found adrift but empty. Individuals in cities who disappear as if swallowed by the rhythms of urban life itself. These cases share core qualities: suddenness, absence of evidence, and the enduring effect on those left behind. Even smaller, everyday vanishings, a coworker who stops showing up, a friend who ceases communication, a neighbor who quietly fades from sight, echo the larger pattern, reminding us of the impermanence of presence and the delicate nature of human connection. Each absence, whether grand or subtle, is a thread pulled from the fabric of reality, leaving gaps that stimulate reflection on the contingency of life and the fragility of awareness. Philosophical reflection deepens as we consider the meaning of disappearance in relation to consciousness. The sudden absence of another forces us to interrogate the foundations of experience. What does it mean to be observed, to be present in the world, to exist within the awareness of others? In these moments, perception, memory, and social reality converge to create a paradoxical space where the vanished are both nowhere and everywhere. Nowhere in immediate physical presence, yet everywhere in recollection, speculation, and emotional resonance. Some theorists even speculate on intersections with other phenomena, parallel realities, temporal anomalies, or collective perceptual effects. Though these remain speculative, they highlight the human desire to frame absence in comprehensible terms. Disappearance is both concrete and abstract, physical and symbolic, touching every dimension of human reflection. Emotionally, disappearances resonate with profound intensity. Grief, anxiety, hope, and bewilderment intermingle in those left behind. Families launch searches, friends ponder the vanished person's last actions, communities reconstruct timelines and trace movements, yet often no definitive answer emerges. The process itself transforms reality. The vanished become mythic, their memory and absence shaping narratives, affecting emotions, and influencing decisions. The phenomenon underscores the human tendency to find meaning even in uncertainty, to preserve presence through memory, imagination, and communal reflection. Absence, therefore, does not simply erase, it transforms, leaving spaces that are both haunting and illuminating, echoing in consciousness in ways that presence alone rarely achieves. Unexplainable disappearances also invite reflection on the impermanence inherent in all human experience. They are extreme manifestations of a universal truth, that life is contingent, that people, relationships, and moments are transient, and that the continuity we take for granted can be disrupted without warning. In this contemplation, absence becomes a teacher, guiding us toward mindfulness, attunement, and an appreciation for the fragile beauty of existence. Each disappearance, whether dramatic, mysterious, or quiet, illuminates the fleeting nature of life, prompting reflection on mortality, relational significance, and the delicate interconnectedness of all human beings. As we navigate our daily lives, small and large disappearances remind us of this impermanence. The empty chair at a dinner table, the silent phone that once buzzed with a friend's message, the missing figure on a familiar street, all serve as invitations to pause, reflect, and notice the subtle, fragile patterns of human presence. In contemplating these moments, we engage with larger philosophical and existential questions. What does it mean to exist, to be noticed, to leave traces in the world? The vanished, though physically absent, leave imprints in memory, thought, and the unfolding of social and personal narratives. Their absence resonates as an echo, shaping our perception of continuity, connection, and the mystery of life itself. Ultimately, unexplainable disappearances compel us to embrace uncertainty and mystery, to cultivate awareness of the ephemeral nature of presence, and to recognize the delicate interplay between absence and consciousness. They remind us that reality is layered, complex, and often beyond our immediate comprehension, that absence is not merely emptiness, but a space for reflection, memory, and philosophical inquiry. By observing, contemplating, and honoring these vanishings, we cultivate a deeper understanding of the transient, interconnected, and mysterious world in which we live. In this meditation, absence becomes a guide, teaching us to value presence, to perceive patterns of continuity and rupture, and to remain attentive to the profound poetry inherent in the spaces between. Each disappearance, whether mundane or extraordinary, leaves a resonance that encourages thought, reflection, and contemplation. In acknowledging these absences, we attune ourselves to the fragility of life, the limits of perception, and the beauty of impermanence. Unexplainable disappearances remind us that human existence is woven from moments both seen and unseen, presence and absence, known and unknowable. They leave us calm, reflective, and aware, encouraging reverence for the transient and mysterious world around us, and a quiet, sustained attention to the delicate threads that hold the tapestry of life together. Animals acting glitched, pets or wildlife freezing or repeating motions. There are moments, often quiet and unexpected, when the world of animals, the familiar, comforting rhythms of pets or the wild, spontaneous movements of creatures in nature, suddenly seems to falter, to glitch in ways that both intrigue and unsettle. Perhaps it is your dog freezing mid-step, tail suspended like a pendulum caught in mid-swing, or a cat circling endlessly around a familiar rug, repeating the same motion with no apparent purpose. Perhaps it is a bird hovering unnaturally in place, wings trembling yet unmoving, or a squirrel pausing on a branch as if caught between moments. These subtle anomalies, where animals behave as though caught in a loop, remind us of the mysterious intersection between instinct, perception, and the ineffable patterns of life itself. Stay with me until the end, for in observing these glitches, we are not merely noting odd behavior. We are invited into a meditation on consciousness, attention, and the delicate threads that connect living beings to the rhythms of the world around them, reflecting on the boundary between the natural, the inexplicable, and the profoundly meaningful. In daily life, the movements of animals often appear instinctive, predictable, even comforting in their repetition. A dog's eager wag, a bird's morning song, the slow amble of a cat through a sunlit room, all seem to follow internal logics that we intuitively grasp. Yet when these movements falter or repeat in unexpected ways, the familiar becomes uncanny. Such moments are striking not because animals are malfunctioning in the mechanical sense, but because their behavior reminds us that life is not always continuous, that perception can encounter pauses, loops, and anomalies. Philosophers and naturalists have long been fascinated by the rhythms of animal behavior, noting how patterns repeat across species, yet always with subtle variation, as if life itself maintains a balance between order and chaos. When an animal appears to freeze, repeat, or glitch, we witness a visible metaphor for the delicate tension between instinct, environment, and consciousness. Across cultures and historical narratives, unusual animal behavior has often been interpreted as a form of communication, a spiritual sign, or a reflection of unseen forces. Indigenous traditions frequently read the actions of animals as omens, messages, or guides, observing not only what creatures do, but how and when they do it. Folklore is replete with tales of animals acting strangely before storms, before disasters, or before pivotal events in human lives. Even in contemporary society, viral videos of pets or wildlife acting glitchy, dogs spinning in endless circles, cats frozen mid-jump, birds hesitating mid-flight, capture our fascination and evoke curiosity, humor, and subtle unease. These behaviors, whether scientifically explicable or not, draw attention to the intricate, sometimes mysterious, processes underlying perception, coordination, and attention in living beings. Scientific inquiry offers a window into possible explanations while simultaneously enhancing the mystery. Neurology, ethology, and cognitive biology suggest that behaviors perceived as glitches may arise from moments of hyperfocus, sensory overload, disrupted neural signaling, or repetitive instinctual drives. A cat's